At 10 p.m. in the East, polls closed in 6 more states. Let's get our results. First in the Senate, NBC News can now project, in no surprise, in Arizona, the return of Senator John McCain to the United States Senate. His toughest battle, obviously, was in the primary against Mr. Hayworth, so that's our projection in Arizona. The decision desk says in Iowa, survey says Chuck Grassley will return. No surprise there either. Now, the earliest details out of Nevada, it's not going to please you. It's too early to call. It could be too early to call several hours or perhaps days from now. And the same for Utah, where there is a similar, although smaller scale race to the one in Nevada with Mike Lee. Pennsylvania, meanwhile, has moved into the too close to call category, still with half the vote in, and the leadership there by Joe Sestak by about 20,000 votes. In Illinois, the Senate race there between Mr. Kirk and Mr. Janulius, also too close to call with nearly half the vote in and a difference of 88,000. Wisconsin, Democrats still holding out hope for Russ Feingold, but at 12% of the vote, the difference is already 49,000 for the challenger Ron Johnson, Republican. In Colorado, also too close to call between the incumbent Michael Bennet, who does have a 50,000 vote margin over the Republican and Tea Party candidate Ken Buck, with a quarter of the vote in. There have been 3 GOP pickups in the Senate. They have been on the table since quite early in the evening. Arkansas, Indiana, and North Dakota, none of them surprises. Thus, the Senate at this hour still looks predominantly Democratic, with a pickup of 3 and a 4 margin, with the rest yet to be determined. The House number, the model keeps changing. The latest looks a little narrower than the last time we looked at this. The NBC News decision desk projection on this is a Republican margin of 45 seats, but that's plus or minus 11, meaning it could be a 56-seat Republican lead or a 34-seat Republican lead. And one other note here, with Governor Ed Rendell of Pennsylvania term limited in the race to succeed him, the NBC News projection is that the Republican Tom Corbett will pick the seat up for the Republican Party over Dan Honorado. And that is what we have to the hour at 10 o'clock with the 10 o'clock poll closings. And obviously the big headlines out of Nevada are yet to come.
You know, Pennsylvania has a regular pendulum. Every 8 years it switches. But I want to get back to something that Lawrence raised, which I think is going to be a big story coming out of tonight. It's not just the case of Rand Paul, who was sort of the classic, iconic Tea Partier. It's the whole problem they have now. They have promised a lot. They're going to deal with the federal debt. They're going to deal with federal spending. That's their central claim. And yet, not only does Rand Paul face the challenge of not filibustering and not really being a man of his fundamentalist mode, but the House has to come up with 218 Republican votes right away to keep the debt ceiling going. That means 218 Republicans have to put the noose around their neck and raise the debt. They all have to do it together, hang together rather than hang separately. And then you've got the issue of cutting spending. We saw Blackwell's a pro. She's been being asked questions by the press and by her citizens for 20 or some years now. Years and years of asking the question, they won't give an answer. How come she couldn't mention one program? Not one federal program that was easy. And I think that's coming. Blackwell, I think this is a real problem for them. They have to deliver on cutting spending. The reason it's tough to cut spending is almost every spending program, from Medicare, anything, has a huge constituency. That's why it's there. And when you cut it, you get an enemy. And you saw Senator McCaskill in our interview before the top of the hour with that little the glint in her eye just grew as we were discussing, or she was discussing. Because she's a real pro. And she knows that there is, as much as we like to see this in uniform components, it's not just Republicans over here and Tea Party here. There are, as we've been pointing out through the evening, as you said, Gene, which Tea Party? Which Tea Party? It's almost parliamentary, and it's exactly here are your 2 main parties, they're Democrats and Republicans, and how many? 16 fringe parties that are all under this banner of Tea Party, but it really is in name only, and these are the people who may hold out to, vote against breathing, essentially.
And I had 4 Tea Party leaders on my show last week, asked them to name me one thing they would cut. One guy named a $1 billion item that he would cut. But that was it. You can't get this answer, as we've all discovered now.
That's the movie Dave, wasn't it?
Right.
They just
John Boehner is the guy, as Chris
Murray,
pointed
the
out,
accountant, came in
with all the Tea Party pressure on him, because what the Senate is going to do, whether it's controlled by the Democrats or the Republicans, is it is just going to look at the House of Representatives and say, go ahead, pass your spending cuts, we'll take a look at them. So Boehner's going to have to go first. And he has pledged tonight to the Tea Party in Liberty Township, Ohio. He has said to them, quote, "I'll never let you down." Yes, he will. He must. He cannot govern without letting them down.
Okay, here's what they'll do. They'll do this across-the-board discretionary cut. Now, they'll exempt everything. But they'll do it across the board.
Right.
How do you do an across the board which exempts everything? It exempts all the entitlement programs because they don't want to touch them. It exempts the Defense Department. They haven't even talked about veterans issues.
You've got to exempt
veterans. So what's left? Oh, we're going to cut education? I don't even think that even. That's even tough to touch.
But the interesting thing, though, is that not only are they going to have trouble doing that, frankly, the House had, what, 420 bills that they passed this year with Democrats in control that never went anywhere because the Senate didn't act on them. The House passes stuff that never goes anywhere all the time. So they can live in la-la land for quite some time. I think the thing that's interesting about them on spending, though, is that people were not punished for being big spending Republicans. John Boehner's been in the Congress for 20 years. Roy Blunt, who's just won, I'm 37 years old. Roy Blunt has been an elected official since the year before I was born, including 14 years in the Congress, including leadership positions all through the George W. Bush era. People who have records of being big government, big spending Republicans won their races. So whatever the Tea Party stands for, it doesn't have anything to do with spending. They have a lot of great rhetoric around spending, but they haven't demanded anything in terms of accountability from Republicans on that issue.
And the ones who will give you some answers, give you what are considered extremely radical answers, like not cut the federal education budget, eliminate it, zero out the department, close the building, sell it.
Okay.
But how much even would that be worth?
It's not. It doesn't get you anywhere.
It doesn't get you anywhere near the Bush tax cuts.
It's all symbolic. It's all symbolism, and that's what I mean. This will come to light as events play out. We will see what happens. It'll be interesting to see what the Democrats do, though. Like with the debt ceiling, right? Boehner's got to get his troops in line. Presumably, Democrats don't want the country to go bankrupt. So what are they going to do? Are they going to say, we'll vote for it?
You see this all the time. Democrats will do the responsible thing. They'll have enough Democrats to vote for it. It'll be passed with Democrats and Republicans in the House. Same thing in the Senate.
You know, so much of this is unexamined by the press. We try to do our job, but it's not. What do you want to cut? You ask me, raise the social issues, abortion. I've tried this with people. Okay, you want to outlaw it. Outlaw it. Okay, what's the punishment? They don't give a 2 seconds thought to anything like this.
If Michael Bennet wins, it may be because he asked that exact question.
It's the right question. And he said, who goes to jail? Who will be criminalized? The doctor? Oh, that's easy. How about the patient?
How long a prison term do you want for the woman who gets an abortion?
If she's been raped.
Yeah.
Let me.
Do you put away the rapist or to put? No, I'm just kidding. But it is almost that absurd. They haven't thought it through because they haven't accepted the role they play in government. And maybe that's what Obama did wrong. The president did wrong. We haven't talked about him. Force the opposition to participate. Don't let them sit out there like he let Boehner sit out there for a year and a half, and Mitch McConnell sit out there for a year and a half, pretends he's still in Chicago with one party.
That's impossible.
Point out there's another party out there.
Impossible. It can't be done.
Why can't you point them out?
Absolutely no presidential maneuver that can force a minority party in either body.
Can't you point out that they're not doing anything?
They did. They pointed that out as much as they could.
I think he got away. I think Boehner got away with anonymity for months and months, and so did McConnell. We didn't even start focusing on those guys till late this year.
There was no coordination between the White House and any of the leadership.
Nailed them.
The House to force something as simple as a vote on tax breaks for the 98% or the 2%. We never got to that point to show that.
Right, you can't really force the minority.
No, you don't force them, but you can expose them to nothing.
Policy incoherence did not even have consequences in this election. Marco Rubio is the Tea Party guy. He's the fiscal conservative Tea Party guy. Marco Rubio's economic plan would add $3.5 trillion to the deficit. That's his plan. That's his fiscally conservative plan.
But the philosophical value of that $3.5 trillion cannot be measured.
Cannot be measured. But he gets, I mean, I fact-checked him on this. We had a back and forth with fake campaign ads. It was really fun. It was nice and lighthearted. But eventually it boiled down to, okay, you want to call yourself a fiscal conservative? How can a fiscal conservative add $3.5 trillion to the deficit? Silence.
Right,
Silence.
To steal the Zero Mostel line from the producers, you're a conservative, conserve.
Yeah.
Let's bring Ed Schultz back into the conversation from the Reed headquarters in Las Vegas. And this is now no longer an insurgent movement that wants to oppose and shout down and yell at town halls and carry signs and make threatening gestures and don't tread on me and I'm going to stomp your head. This is now a group of people who are going to have to somehow work with an established party, in fact, fact, to established parties to get some things done that they have just vowed not to do?
Well, you know, Keith, one thing that the Tea Party has never been clear on, and any of their candidates, in my opinion, have never been very clear on, is job creation and outsourcing to China and Mexico and Indonesia. It seems like that's off limits when you talk to somebody who's a Tea Party candidate. The fact of the matter is that this change is taking place in this country tonight because people are frustrated with the lack of progress. We're not moving our economy fast enough. So Rand Paul, whoever else might win tonight who's a Tea Partier, they can all get up and talk about this rhetoric about governments, the boogeyman, everything else. What are you going to do to create jobs? Are you going to go to Wall Street and make sure they free up the money? Are you going to give more incentives to small businesses? Because President Obama's been trying to do that, and you've been blocking them all along. So back to the back to this three-letter word, job. Do you have one? Can you keep it? And is it going overseas? The Tea Party needs to be clear on that. Now, one thing that is happening tonight, if the House, and we're reporting, does go to the conservatives, the Republicans, this means that the corporate money is going to be around for the next election cycle. The Democrats aren't going to be able to match this kind of funding. The Democrats aren't going to be able to get the corporate contributions, and there's not going to be any change. The fundraising for 2012, it starts tomorrow. And that's why I think it is very important for the psyche, for the confidence, for the soul of the Democratic Party to get a victory here tonight in Nevada with Harry Reid. If they take out Harry Reid, which would be their second Democratic leader in 6 years, it will give them a real kick in their step. And it will certainly say that, well, we threw a lot of money at Harry Reid, we didn't beat him. Well, I guess we got to do more. The next 24 months is going to be a battle royale when it comes to politics in this country.
Ed Schultz with us from Las Vegas. We'll get back to you in a moment, Ed. Just to buttress what you said, in the first set of exit polls that Lester Holt brought us 3.5 hours ago, 9 out of 10 said the economy is not in good shape. 29% who voted today said there were layoffs in their own family, and those issues remain paramount, just absolutely crushing everyone else, every other possible topic in all the exit polling so far. Chris?
Let's begin. U.S. Congressman Michelle Bachmann, Republican of Minnesota. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us. I haven't had you on in so long. I have to ask you, if your party gets control of the House of Representatives, will you use the subpoena power to investigate the Democratic members of Congress for un-Americanism?
Okay, so your question was, if I heard you, I'm sorry, we got a very happy audience back here tonight.
Well, they're probably cheering me, but let me ask you.
Power? Is that the question?
Will you use the subpoena power, which you will have as a majority, if you claim the majority of the Congress? It looks like you will. Will you use the subpoena power to do what you said on my program you would do? Investigate the Democratic members of Congress for un-American activities.
I think the first thing we're going to do is try and set the economy in order, because jobs is the big issue. You were just having a discussion about that, and what people want to make sure is that no one's taxes are going up. So I'm calling on Speaker Pelosi during the lame duck session to listen to the American people. They're speaking overwhelmingly tonight. Don't raise our taxes. Stop the out-of-control spending. That's how we're going to get jobs back. So I hope that during the lame duck session, she'll have an extension of all of the current tax policy, because the very sad story is that 1 second after midnight, every taxpayer in the United States will see a dramatic increase in taxes. No one can afford that right now. That's job one for the United States Congress. We better listen to what the people have been saying, and we better do what they're asking us to do.
Well, your colleague, Congressman Issa, who's going to chair the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, has said he will use the subpoena power to investigate this administration. You have said on my program to me that you want to see the Democratic members of Congress investigated by the media. You put it that way. You wanted us to investigate the Democrats for un-American attitudes. I just want to ask you, do you stick with that plan? Do you want us to do it, or will you do it with the subpoena power? Who do you want to investigate the Democratic members of Congress for un-American thinking?
Well, the plan that I've been talking about all through this election is really four things, and I would encourage the new Republican leadership to take this on as the agenda in 2011, and it's very simple. It's keep the current tax policies so no one has increased taxes. Number two, we need to put a full-scale repeal of Obamacare, pass through the House. Hopefully it can get through the Senate. And then number three, we need to make sure that we secure the United States borders. And number four, we need to make sure that we don't have a huge increase in national energy tax. Those are the four issues that the American people want the Congress to deal with because they want to get certainty back into the economy.
Right.
What this election shows is that people believe in this country. They love free enterprise.
Right.
They love capitalism. Make sure that we have jobs going forward.
Let me ask you, Congresswoman Bachmann, are you hypnotized tonight? Has someone hypnotized you? Because no matter what I ask you, you give the same answer. Are you hypnotized? Has someone put you under a trance tonight? Did you give me the same answer no matter what question I put to you?
I think the American people are the ones that finally are speaking tonight. We're coming out of our trance. Really, we're coming out of our nightmare.
Okay,
so
well,
I think people are thrilled tonight. I imagine that thrill is probably maybe not quite so tingly on your leg anymore.
I know you get that. Your sign holder has already raised that issue. Well, someday we'll have you on the show again and we'll get to the investigations. But congratulations. I know you will never be defeated on your philosophy, which is to investigate everyone for everything.
Which is free markets and embrace the principles of our founders.
Okay, thank you very much, Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, who seems to be in a trance, but thank you. Back to you, Keith.
Between the trance and the tingle, I feel like...
No, it's not a tingle. That's their word.
When did this broadcast
never use that word.
Physical? That's what I want to know.
2006.
Can we talk for a second about what they're trying to do there? With that sign, they're trying to say MSNBC is in the tank and NBC is in the tank
Let me get back to this. That's ad hominem. Back during the 2004 Democratic Convention in Boston, when Barack Obama gave an inspiring speech about America and what America is capable of. And I wish he'd get back to talking about our country and that exceptional aspect of this country. You can actually come here and become an American no matter what your background. That wonderful aspect that a lot of people believe in about our country as the wonderful aspect of our country that is exceptional.
Something Senator Rubio just talked about.
I was thrilled by that, and I said so. And physically thrilled. When people talk about this country, I do it that way. I am overwhelmed by this country. They're making fun of me, fine, for saying that. I can live with that. The important question is that Michelle Bachmann has become a very successful sort of troubadour for the Tea Party by going around and making these extreme statements. On our program, she said she thought her colleagues right across the aisle should be investigated McCarthy style for anti-American attitudes. That was a strong statement. She either means it or she doesn't, or she's irresponsible. I tried to hold her account to that, and she didn't answer the question, and she did seem trance-like there. Every question I put to her was almost irrelevant to this sort of a thing she was talking, this moronically looking directly at the camera and repeating over and over again the same words.
I think you did give her the benefit of the doubt with the word hypnotized, and we'll leave it there. We have a call to make on the Colorado governor's race before we go to break here. An important one with Governor Ritter retiring there. John Hickenlooper, the mayor, the popular mayor of Denver, has withstood challenges from a Republican candidate and an independent candidate, and you will notice that Tom Tancredo, the independent, appears to be in, or is in second place with more than a third of the vote in. He will finish ahead of Dan Mays, who accused then Mayor Hickenlooper of leading to the possible UN takeover of the city of Denver via bicycles.
Depending on how Dan Mays does in that race, the Republican Party in Colorado may be reduced to minor party status and lose their one of their top two lines on the ballot.
All right, we're going to run the gauntlet. You just finished with Congresswoman Bachmann. We're now joined by the member of the new, as we expect, and the NBC News projection continues to be, the new Republican majority in the House of Representatives, the man who has been the minority whip, Eric Cantor of Virginia, who joins us now. And I'll throw out the easiest of questions. First off, Congressman, what are you going to do?
Well, first of all, it's good to be on. It's good to be on MSNBC on a night like this. But you know, we
I get your point.
Exactly. Chris, that was for you. We are really looking forward to getting down to work. I mean, come on. The American people have spoken loud and clear tonight, and they've said, you've not listened, Washington. You know, there's been 20 months of policies that just have not produced the results that have been promised. And it's up to us as Republicans, if we're lucky enough to solidify the gains that we've already experienced tonight, when we assume majority, to do just that, and that is to focus on the question that most people are looking at as to why people are out of work. And we've got to go about doing that in a fiscally limited, in a fiscally disciplined like manner to make sure that we are focused on what people care about. That's what tonight is really all about.
Congressman Cantor, it's Rachel Maddow here. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Every Republican who we've talked to tonight about the agenda for the new Congress, if Republicans are taking control of the House, has mentioned tax cuts, extending all of the Bush tax cuts. That means that the difference between the Democrats' proposal on tax cuts and the Republicans' proposal on tax cuts is about $700 billion worth of tax cuts for the richest people in the country. Do you think that that $700 billion should be added to the deficit? If you don't, what will you cut to compensate for that money, that loss in revenue?
Rachel, first of all, let's set the record straight here. There's no tax cuts. Nobody's getting a tax cut. Come January 1st, if nothing's done, well, listen, even if it is, if January 1 comes, one of two things are going to happen. Either your tax rates go up or they stay the same. There's no tax cuts.
When the Bush tax cuts were passed initially, they were set to expire in 10 years. So the tax cuts that Bush passed, that were passed under the Bush administration, were set to expire this year. So if we're going to have new tax cuts, they will be new ones because these ones will go away.
There's no tax cuts. If you're a small business person or even a working family, if you are somebody at the lowest spectrum of the income level, you're going to receive a tax hike if nothing is done right now. That's really where people are, Rachel. And so if we're looking at it and we say we want to create jobs, because that's what this election's about, is why are so many people out of work? Why isn't Washington doing something? I don't think many Americans are going to agree that raising taxes right now is the prescription we need when you're looking to the small businesses and the private sector to create those jobs. That's where we're coming from.
The difference between, I'm trying to get to the difference between what Democrats are proposing and what you're proposing, though. Democrats are proposing either an extension of the tax cuts or new tax cuts, whatever you want to call them, for everybody except the highest earners. The difference in revenue that's going to mean is about $700 billion. Should that be added to the deficit?
The difference is, and the question is, Rachel, who pays for it?
Yeah.
Do you want the taxpayers, the small businesses paying for it by raising taxes, or do you want Washington to finally come up with ways to cut this budget deficit? And you ask us how we're going to cut the deficit. Well, you know, Republicans, we've already put on the table $350 billion worth of cuts. First of all, we start by getting there and saying we're going to reduce discretionary spending back to 2008 levels. That'll produce $100 billion in the first year. It'll get close to $1 trillion over the 10-year budget window. You know, these are things that we can do. We know in 2008, the sun rose and set. Nothing stopped here in this country. So we've got to get back to focusing on what families and small businesses across this country are doing, and that is tightening the belt, trying to live within our means. And it's high time that Washington do that, and that's the approach that I think this Republican majority is going to take.
All right, so it will be added to the deficit. Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate that.
You're going to have to loosen the belt before you tighten it. As you know, you and the Republican leadership in the House, Speaker Boehner, are going to have to bring up an increase in the debt ceiling to be voted on by your membership. John Boehner tonight has told the Tea Party, quote, "I'll never let you down." Do you think the Tea Party will feel let down when you and John Boehner move to raise the debt ceiling next year?
Look, right now, what the people are saying, including the folks in the Tea Party, is get your business straight, Washington. Start listening to us and start demonstrating the kind of fiscal discipline.
I'm not hearing an answer.
I'm going to give you an answer. I'm going to give you an answer. And start demonstrating the fiscal discipline that we expect of our federal government and most especially the Republican Party.
You're going to raise the debt ceiling, or you're going to let the country crash?
we're going to have at least 3 or 4 months here to demonstrate that we're about fiscal discipline, cutting spending, going about the things that Americans want, which is to bring government back into its rightful place and balance with the private sector. And then you're going to raise the debt ceiling or let the country crash?
Okay.
No, listen, we've got 3 or 4 months until that gets here. And you know
you
what?
won't answer any questions about the debt ceiling until 1 minute to midnight when you have to raise it?
Listen, once again, the message we heard tonight was, you know, Washington, start listening to us. We want to see jobs right now. Okay. We want to see some certainty. You got a government that's out of control, and we want to see
who's going to be the leadership representative of the Tea Party? Who in your leadership will represent the Tea Party? Michelle Bachmann has said today she would like to be in that leadership representing the Tea Party. Can she have your job? Whose job should she take to represent the Tea Party accurately, since you guys don't seem to be very well connected with them at this point?
You know what? If you go out and you talk to the members of the Tea Party like I have, you'd understand these are people that are focused on trying to get America back on track. This is not some group of fringe individuals. These are the tip of the spear that reflect the frustration that most independents have in this country towards Washington right now. We're spending money we don't have. We're producing no results. We keep making promises and not keeping them. That's the frustration. That's what the Tea Party's about. They've been a very positive influence on the debate surrounding this election, and I believe when Republicans regain majority in January, you will see a very disciplined crowd going about trying to do the things that are required right now, producing results, getting people back to work.
Last year, the Republicans criticized the Democrats in the House for not passing the first budget resolution. So I have a lot of respect for your leadership in this regard. Are you going to commit tonight to actually passing a budget resolution, which you criticized the Democrats for not doing last year?
Absolutely.
Will you commit to that? There will be a budget resolution passed by the House Republican majority.
Absolutely, Chris. You know, this is something that this is the first time since the Budget Act was passed in the early 70s that the House of Representatives did not pass a budget resolution.
That was a failure on their part. You're right. I hope you guys deliver. Thank you.
Congressman Cantor, thank you for your time. It's been fun. I think you'll agree with that. Thank you, sir.
Again, a pleasure to be on MSNBC tonight.
I'm sure you feel that way. Thank you.
Please come back.
Yeah, indeed. The irony, though, of the phrase...
I want him to come back if he's not going to answer
No, but I was just going to say the irony...
I mean, this is ridiculous.
Lawrence,
a guy like that comes on and just spins those talking points, doesn't answer a single question.
Was there some new irony not added to the meaning of the phrase that he used there? Washington is not listening to us. Did you not get that feeling from here? Each time we've tried to ask Congressman Blackburn, Congressman Bachmann, now currently Minority Whip Cantor, each time we've asked for specific answers, we have gotten platitudes because Washington is not listening to us.
No, with one of them we got hypnosis.
That's right. You got the.
I really believe that she was hypnotized. She was paying. There was no affect to her as she was answering the questions. It was just a continuing stream.
She was worried about those signs being placed correctly.
That's what they call on message, Chris. It's a standard political posture. She was on message. I've seen plenty of candidates.
We have to be on message and take commercial messages, believe it or not. We'll resume the role of discussion of the role of Hypnotoad in this campaign in a moment. But first, we're still waiting for the results. Something to guide you out of Nevada. It was too early to call when the polls closed 27 minutes ago. As well as Pennsylvania, Illinois, Wisconsin, Colorado. Our special election coverage will continue. What are you looking at me like that for?
I'm just hoping something about Nevada was going to come out.
Yeah, no, sorry, nothing yet. Stay with us after this break. I had something about Nevada or toads, or both. Still nothing of note out of Nevada, and we will deliver on that promise when we can, when we have something to characterize that race. It might be quite some time. We did want to give you something of sort of a sidebar to things, and so much of the night has been a discussion of the Tea Party and its influence, extraordinary high influence, say, in Indiana, and particularly the influence of Sarah Palin. Here's the scoreboard to this point, with 32 races still outstanding. For those endorsed by the former governor of Alaska, she's not hitting too well so far at a 2-5 mark. To look at the Tea Party as a whole, and again, a disparate group with 115 races still outstanding, they're not doing all that well either, well under 500 at 14-21. So the meme that might be presented that this is some sort of revolution from the outside, well, we can debate how outside it was to begin with, can be debated to a great degree. We do have a result now that pertains to this out of South Carolina, where we can call the South Carolina governor's race a dubious set of business the last couple of years and the last couple of governors. But if we have that, here it is. We're waiting on the computer. Nikki Haley has been projected the winner of the governor's race in South Carolina, in the state of South Carolina, after another controversial campaign. And the actual hard numbers, with nearly 80% of the vote in, a significant lead of perhaps, I'm looking under my notes here, 46,000 votes over the Democrat Vincent Shaheen. Let's now go out and get a state of play assessment on how things are going for the Democrats in the Senate, which they seem likely to hold, with the House, as we say, going to the Republicans by all projections. Let's go to Nora O'Donnell in Washington with Senator Robert Menendez, the head of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. Nora?
That's right. Good evening to you, Keith. And I'm with a man who has a bit of a spring in his step tonight, and that is the chairman of the Senatorial Committee, Senator Menendez. Not only are you probably going to hold the majority, you feel good about that, but what's going on in Pennsylvania? I just looked at the numbers. 80% reporting and Sestek 51, Toomey 49. Do you really think you can win Pennsylvania tonight?
Well, we'll see when all the votes are counted, but we'd like to call Joe Sestek the comeback kid once again. Right now, it's looking pretty good. We'll see for the rest of the evening, but
what's happening? What's happening in Pennsylvania that it's so close?
Well, I mean, look, these races, we've said all along these races are going to be close, and several of these races are going to be close, but I'd rather be on the upside of that close margin at this stage of the game.
But another contest that we thought was going to be close, Illinois, 63% in, I just checked the numbers, and Janulius, 49, Kirk, 46%. What are you hearing on the ground about Illinois?
Again, Illinois has got a great, these two states had great turnout operations, great ground games, and on close elections, that can make all the difference in the world. We're certainly hoping that in both cases, that's exactly what's going to happen.
I've been in touch with you and a lot of your staff who kept on saying, look at the early voting, Nora, look at the early voting, we're doing well. And then I would talk to the Republicans, and I use this word before, they say, that's baloney, But what was the early voting, get out the vote effort that you engaged in these states?
Well, clearly, in states that permitted early voting, we wanted to get as many voters and our targeted voters out early, understanding that late voters, can break different ways. And so that made a big push in both of these states. I think it's going to make a very big push in Nevada. And so we're looking forward to good results as a result of that effort.
And why do you feel confident about Nevada at this hour?
Well, we'll have to see. But the reality is that if you look at the early vote in Nevada, more Democrats came out. Harry Reid's probably got the best ground operation in the nation, and in a close race, that can make all the difference in the world.
So there you have it, Keith. The Democrats feeling very confident. Pennsylvania and Illinois, a lot closer than a lot of people thought at this hour. And then the Democrats saying they feel good in Nevada, and also Washington State, where I was told earlier by a top source that 80% of the projected vote is already in. And based on that modeling, they feel comfortable about Washington State. So, Keith, again, Menendez, a spring in his step tonight.
Nora O'Donnell with Senator Menendez. Great thanks to you both, Nora. Nora's got a spring in her step, too. Thank you, Nora. It's not spring in the House, on the other hand, for the Democrats. That's been clear since early in the evening, and no surprises in the predictions as to what's going on there, that the House is going into Republican hands. The question is by how much. We're joined now by the former governor of Virginia, Douglas Wilder, who has taken some time to be with us tonight, and we thank you for doing so, sir.
Thanks, Keith. Good to be with you guys.
The four key sort of bellwether races in the state of Virginia have been, three of the four seem to be on the negative side for the Democrats, and the fourth looks like a virtual tie. Just to review them, Perriello in the fifth, Boucher in the ninth, Nye in the second, and a tie for Connolly in the 11th. Virginia, it swings back and forth from election to election, or is this the result of something specific? Assess your state for us.
Well, Virginia is a growing state. I was very impressed with what took place in 2008. I projected that what would happen in Virginia could influence other states like North Carolina, and it did, even Ohio, and it did. As you know, the campaign is going to start for presidency tomorrow morning, and people are going to be looking to see what happens. This doesn't bode well for Democrats in Virginia in terms of where we are. We've lost the gubernatorial race, we lose these congressional races. The only Democrat that is clearly winning tonight in Virginia in the congressional seat is Senator Scott. And he's in a district that I created when I was governor. Obviously, that district was more favorable to minorities. This doesn't speak well for us, and I think when I say us, I mean Democrats. We have got to get a better message. We've got to get a better tooling. We've got to get it out. We've got to make it simple. We've got to let people know why they need to vote for change. I've been listening to you guys, and I think you're absolutely right relative to what the responsibilities of the Republicans is going to be. They are going to have to show they can govern. They're going to have to reach across the aisle. They're going to have to, likewise, have the Democrats to come to them, and the public is looking for results, not who's in charge. And they want to have taxes spent wisely. Americans are not afraid to spend or to tax. They don't mind that. They know it costs to govern, but they want to know where it's going and how it's going. I hope that the results tonight, as far as the Virginia congressional elections are concerned, are not necessarily going to be that which we see 2 years from now. But unless we change our message, it could very easily be that, Keith.
Governor Wilder, stand by a second. We have a result from Wisconsin to project for you in the Senate race there between one of the lions of the Senate, Russ Feingold, and his Republican challenger, Ron Johnson. It has been tight all evening, but NBC News is now projecting that in this race, the incumbent, Russ Feingold, will fall to Republican challenger Ron Johnson, and the vote at nearly 30% in is a 15-point margin for the Republican Ron Johnson. And here is now the increased number of pickups for the Republicans in the Senate, 4 to this point. We don't have any guidance yet of any kind on Nevada and the Harry Reid Angle race out there. Polls having closed 38 minutes ago, but right now it's Arkansas and Indiana. And at this hour, there's that number again. Now it's 45-43, 4 pickups with the remaining number outstanding. This is not good news for the Democrats, and it's particularly poignant, I think, for progressives and the left side of the party, that Russ Feingold, who was, again, a target of a lot of money going into that race from outside to pick him off, was indeed picked off.
Not unexpected, though.
No, it was predicted, and we kind of saw it coming. Nonetheless, it's kind of a shock. He's been around for a long time, and you know, an established senator. You know, aside from that race, though, there is kind of an interesting pattern. I mean, and Deval Patrick is winning in Massachusetts. In Connecticut, Blumenthal won over Linda McMahon, who poured all that money into the race. You know, if this is a wave, and I think it is a wave, it's not one that sweeps away all before it and changes traditionally Democratic constituencies suddenly into Republican or Tea Party constituencies. In fact, you know, solidly Democratic places seem to be still pretty solidly Democratic.
I think it'll also be interested to see down ticket effects, that when we do see things change. Does, for example, Marco Rubio winning handily in Florida mean that Alex Sink has a harder time in that governor's race against Rick Scott? Is there down ballot effect? I mean, some of what Feingold was facing in Wisconsin was great antipathy for the Democratic governor there. Jim Doyle not on the ballot again, choosing not to run for a third term, but Jim Doyle's approval rating was something like 27%. He'd faced really difficult choices in Wisconsin, a state hurting like many are, but they had a $7 billion budget deficit, and he tackled it. He raised taxes, he furloughed workers, did a lot of things that made him very unpopular. He was a Democrat in a leadership position in that state, and that drove a lot of those wins against Russ Feingold. So I think these races interact with each other in addition to being part of the national discussion.
Yeah, and I thought there was going to be a wipeout from Scranton all the way to Oshkosh. I thought this was the Rust Belt talking. And I look at this courageous, gutsy race that Joe Sexton's been running here. He not only knocked off Specter, the establishment candidate, all the money guys were behind him, the big city guys were behind him, and he's never been a popular person among the Democratic Party. And there he is. He doesn't have a great personality. He's a little guy. He's out there wearing a jacket. Look what he's doing. He is beating the wind here. And if he wins this race, this is absolutely inspiring to me, that he can win this race in Pennsylvania. I don't know what's going to happen tonight. He's ahead. You know, it really does show that guts matter. 2 notes about the Wisconsin race. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce put $750,000 into that race against Russ Feingold, and the winner, Ron Johnson, put $8.2 million
to his own campaign, 64% of the money that he had available to him. But Citizens United is not an issue. Howard Fineman joins us again for the first time in a while from the Listening Post, and he's been listening to the White House. And we saw that from the graphic that you're at the Listening Post. Howard?
I am at the Listening Post, and I've been listening very hard, and the White House isn't saying anything. I do know, and I did finally get some responses out of them over there, or down there, since I'm here in New York. The president is watching the results closely. I think
what channel is he watching?
I'm sure he's watching MSNBC, just like Evan Bayh is. And
watching. He's watching ESPN. Let's just deal with that, all right?
That's true. Well, it's true that he earlier today, I think, took some time out from this very exciting night to congratulate the San Francisco Giants on their victory in the World Series. But I think what the White House is looking at is what we're looking at right now. And I agree with Gene Robinson. I think that's the White House's hope here, which is that some of these Senate races and other races in traditionally Democratic places are going to stay Democratic despite the Republican tide elsewhere. So that means they're looking closely, obviously, at Illinois, the president's home state, where Giannoulias still's got a shot. They're looking at Pennsylvania, where the Philly machine is working very hard to try to win that for Sestak. They're looking at Nevada, where Harry Reid got everybody from Capitol Hill except the elevator operators out there to try to help him save that race. And that's a specific reference to Chris Matthews, because he knows what it's like to work on the Hill. So that's what's going on at the White House. They're not going to say anything tonight. There's not going to be a conversation between John Boehner, for example, and the president this evening. None of that sort of diplomacy stuff. The president and his people are going to wait till tomorrow to the press conference at 1. They're going to desperately hope to hang on to some of these Democratic Senate seats and then come out and say, we want to work on the deficit, yes, just like you do, and we hope you'll work with us. And yes, we want to refocus on jobs. Now, on the deficit and the debt ceiling that we've been talking about a lot tonight, I talked to some Democratic leaders on the Hill the other week about this, because this debt ceiling thing is obviously going to be coming up. Here's what they expect to happen. And I also talked to Darrell Issa, who's going to be running that investigative committee. Issa is going to focus on spending initially, not on un-American activities and the kind of thing that Michelle Bachmann had talked about. Try not. This is where, the Democrats have been lax in terms of spending. And they'll try to show that to the Tea Party people. Then they're going to have some kind of vote on, across the board freeze on discretionary spending, admittedly something of a joke, but something they'll use to talk to the Tea Party about. And then they're going to tell the Tea Party people, don't worry, we can vote to raise the debt ceiling this time because we'll blame it all on the Democrats. Look what Darrell Issa dug up. Look what other things we've dug up. So we can argue that this is because of the president and the Democrats that they're raising the debt ceiling this one last time. That's what they're going to argue, and the Democrats expect the Republicans to be able to get away with it.
So, once again, another vote against discretionary spending, the big night.
Of course.
It's a terrible night if you're heavily invested in the discretionary industry, or if you have any personal discretion, you're absolutely screwed into the ground. Howard Fineman at the discretionary industry. Don't be indiscreet. Much to come yet. Illinois, too tight right now. Pennsylvania, really close. Nevada, unknown territory. Our midterms coverage will continue here on MSNBC. Well, the overall direction of the night seems clear at this point. There are several key Senate races that are indeed too close to call in every sense of the word. 16,000 votes separate the Republican Mark Kirk and the Democrat Alex Giannoulias in Illinois, with nearly three-quarters of the vote in. In Pennsylvania, with 80% of the vote in, the difference is 15,000 votes between Joe Sestak and, trailing by that margin, Pat Toomey in the lead. And in Colorado, 44% of the vote, and the difference is 42,000, with the benefit of the doubt going to the incumbent, Michael Bennet against the Tea Party challenger Ken Buck. And that does not even address what's coming up at 11 o'clock. California, Idaho closing, North Dakota, Oregon, and Washington State in the Patty Murray race there as well, as we continue at their midterms desk with Ariana Huffington, the Huffington Post. And Ariana, give me that sort of big picture. I know we're far from finished, despite things falling off cameras back here. We're far from finished. Give us the big picture as you see it at this point.
The big picture, Keith, has to do with what the exit poll said. 9 out of 10 Americans worried about the economy. 90% worried about the future. And remember, back in July 2009, the president in Michigan defiantly said, "That's fine. Let me own it." He basically acknowledged that he owns the economy, even though, going back to the Colin Powell Pottery Barn rule, you know, if you break it, you own it. He didn't break it, but he owns it. And unfortunately, they completely miscalculated when they put healthcare ahead of jobs. They miscalculated because Larry Summers and Tim Geithner and his Wall Street-centric economic team basically convinced him that once Wall Street was saved, everything else would follow, that unemployment was just a lagging indicator. And Summers was, remember, all over the news in December telling us there would be growth in the spring, like Chauncey Gardner, and there wasn't. And the inevitable happened. The public lost faith in Democrats using government to do good things. And the fact that healthcare is going to kick in 2014 for most people wasn't much of a consolation prize.
Was there no serious effort, do you suppose, to sell that rather simplified but very impacting explanation of what an economy is, that there are 3 components in an economy in terms of who spends and thus who pushes the cash around and thus who creates new jobs, that you have government that can be spending, you have people who can be spending, the consumers, and the third element is you have business that can be spending. If business isn't spending and the consumer doesn't have the money to spend, if the government doesn't spend, nobody's spending, and there's no money out there, and there's no jobs to be created. It seems to me that if I, having really bottomed out at math in my senior year of high school, could run through that and make it fairly intelligible in 30 seconds, that every Democratic candidate could have done the same thing. Why didn't they?
Well, they didn't because, you know, government did not go out and really spend to create jobs. There was no WPA. There was no FDR-type big government spending that was purposeful. Remember that stimulus bill, that much maligned stimulus bill, included $300 billion of tax cuts, which was a terrible strategic mistake on behalf of the White House to put in the tax cuts mixed up with the stimulus bill because they thought that's how they were going to get the Republicans to go along. And the worst part of it is that the White House still has not learned. The president still has not understood what they did wrong. And that's really what does not promise a real course correction after the Republicans take over the House. I mean, we already have Governor Kane thinking that compromise means going ahead with the Republicans and extending all tax cuts, including to those making $250,000 and over. That's their idea of compromise, doing exactly what the Republicans want.
Ariana, forgive me, I'm hammered for time here, and we've got to get to Lester Holt with the Voice of the Voter exit polling. So our great thanks, and I hope to continue with you after the top of the hour. Let's now look indeed at those exit polls and the latest numbers as Lester Holt has them for us. Lester?
Keith, I want to make an interesting observation here. A lot of people have been trying to look for comparisons between what we're seeing here and what happened in '94. Remember the wave of voter discontent that swept Republicans into power in the House? This may be 1994 on steroids. Let's take a look. If you look back 16 years ago, we found 23% of voters said their family's financial situation was worse than it had been 2 years before. Today, that number is at 41%. So a worse personal situation and a much more pessimistic view of the national economy as well. In '94, 58% said the economy was bad. Tonight, that's a whopping 89%. Back then, 56% of voters said the country was on the wrong track. Today, that number is at 61%. And we've heard so much about the angry voter this year. Back then, 19% said they were angry at the federal government. Tonight, that number jumps to up 7 points to 26%. 1994, remembered as a big setback for President Clinton, if you'll recall. 27% of voters back then said they cast their vote as a protest against Bill Clinton. Tonight, even more, 37% said they're casting their vote to oppose Barack Obama, Keith.
Lester Holt with some intriguing exit poll numbers. Thank you again, Lester. All right, 37% voting.
Those numbers, by the way, indicate that a real Republican weakness this time. These numbers are much worse. The economic numbers and the economic attitude of the voter is dramatically worse than it was in 1994. Republicans should be making much bigger gains. They are not even matching the gains they made in 1994. In 1994, in this state, Mario Cuomo was defeated for re-election. His son is being elected tonight almost by acclamation in this state. The things that the Democrats are holding on to, despite these horrible economic numbers, show you that this country is not ready to hand over everything to Republicans.
I think that's a very, very important point. I think oftentimes when you look big picture at these kind of races, you think that the structural factors are the things that make all the difference. Doesn't really matter the campaigning. It's all about what's going on in the economy. But when you look at those anger numbers, when you look at the economic numbers, you're right. This ought to be a bigger wave than we were seeing in 94. To keep us honest, in 94, they lost 54. Democrats lost 54 seats in the House. They lost 8 seats in the Senate. We should keep track of how close we are to that pace, given those differences in the fundamentals.
Do we have that House panel before we go, the latest projection on the House before we go to the top of the hour? I've asked for it, and here it appears. A difference now with a Republican majority of 46 with a plus or minus of 9. So that 47, excuse me. There's where you are right now to answer your question, Rachel. So it is not historic. It is large, and it is a big swing. It is not historic. And we still have California, Washington State closing at the top of the hour. Our latest from there as our MSNBC midterm coverage continues after this. A few seconds before 8 o'clock Pacific, 11 Eastern time, and the poll closings reflect that. California, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. And NBC News is now stating about the California Senate race that it is too early to call, although the incumbent, Barbara Boxer, against whom $11 billion has been spent, has the lead at this point, but it's too early to call. In the Oregon Senate race, Ron Wyden will be returned, according to our NBC projection, in what is not much of a surprise by any stretch of the imagination. Mike Crapo, the Republican in Idaho, will also be going back to Washington. That one already called by NBC News. And in Washington State, too early to call in Patty Murray's race for re-election against Dino Rossi, and no lead announced to that point, at least by our decision desk. So all of the decisions here, Wyden and Crapo. Thus, no additions to the pickups, which you saw. The Feingold seat, Wisconsin gone, Arkansas, Lincoln, Indiana by, and at this hour, the Senate 46-44 to independents, and that would obviously indicate that 8 Senate seats are yet to be decided tonight. Also of note, California's governor's race, another $11 billion job. Jerry Brown and Meg Whitman, too early to call. Polls closed a minute and 7 seconds ago. I think that's a reasonable expectation at this point. And there it is. So we have Wyden and an early lead for Barbara Boxer in California.
Well, you know, it's not a good night for people who have tried to work across the aisle, and Lawrence knows how this works. You had Wyden cutting a deal with Bob Bennett. Bob Bennett got blown out of the saddle for sitting down and trying to come up with a health care plan that made some sense to at least the two guys who did it. McCain-Feingold. What happened to Feingold? McCain gets reelected by going arch-right and joining his polarized party. What happened to Feingold? Would somebody please tell me what happened to Feingold? I thought he did one of the best things that's been done for years, McCain-Feingold, and yet goodbye.
McCain, I think the situation with Russ Feingold in the Senate is that Russ Feingold never earned the loyalty of his party because he was so iconoclastic, because he went his own way, because he made principled votes on things like the Patriot Act, even when everybody else in the party wanted him to do something else. He was not a go-along-to-get-along Democrat.
But why
so
in Wisconsin?
Never earned national favor from anybody other than progressives.
He got blown out tonight.
He got blown out tonight, but every wind against him in Wisconsin and no outside help at all. And then he's against somebody who's got a ton of outside help and a ton of money. He just didn't have anybody supporting him because the National Party never backed him up.
Rachel, what does it do to the argument that's going on inside the Democratic Party between progressives and others in the Democratic Party about how Democrats should run? Did Russ Feingold lose because he wasn't liberal enough?
I think that the way that Russ Feingold ran here was almost immaterial. He got blown out of the water in terms of money and in terms of the wins in his district. I mean, you can blame it on the way that he campaigned, but I think if you could counterfactual it and you could make him campaign a different way, I don't see those numbers moving very much. I really don't.
Let's look at that other outstanding race that energizes the West in Nevada, where Ed Schultz of the Ed Show here on MSNBC is standing by and has been throughout the evening at the Harry Reid headquarters. What are we hearing in this one? Obviously, our stance on it, it's too early to call an hour after poll closing. What are you hearing there, Ed?
Well, believe it or not, there's a Tea Party event that's going on the other side of this facility, and Joe the plumber just walked by. I mean, I don't know if he lost all his money on the crap table or just happened to go in the wrong door. It's too early to call, as you say. There's no question about that. But there are some very encouraging signs. As I said earlier tonight, this quiet confidence, it's now starting to turn into a positive whisper for the Harry Reid camp. The early voting, 380,000 early votes were cast here in Nevada, and the voter turnout, we are told, is not as good as they thought it was going to be, which Reid people are saying that's good for us. The comment from them is that we feel pretty good about what's going on right now. Still too early to call, but, you know, a 500-vote victory here is going to be a wide margin of victory because Harry Reid's had him even closer than that before. But the room is starting to fill up here. The polls have closed here in Nevada, and they're pretty confident, feeling pretty good right now, but still too close to call. But they are really encouraged by that early vote. If I could just throw one thing about Wisconsin. I did a number of town hall meetings in Wisconsin, and I had some auto workers come over from Janesville, and I asked them, how do you feel about Russ? They said, we feel good about anybody if they can get us a job. It's jobs. Russ Feingold. I mean, if you're a liberal, you're hurting tonight. This guy was tough on the Bush administration. This guy was tough on the Patriot Act. He didn't think health care. He didn't think Wall Street reform went far enough. He worked it. Russ Feingold did a minimum of 70 town hall meetings a year, every year he's been in the Senate since 1992. Well liked by the progressive community. The question is what happened? What happened was that a self-financed guy came in, outspent him 4-1. And I think you could be the best lefty in the world, but if you're outspent 4-1, you could lose by a big margin. And this doesn't bode well for the next senator who's up. Russ Feingold was considered to be the most popular of the two. Herb Kohl is going to be up in 2012. This does not bode well for the Democrats in the Badger State. A tough night at the office for the liberals, no question about it. And it's going to be a very pivotal state in 2012. Let's not forget that President Obama, not long ago, was in Madison, Wisconsin, and drew a huge crowd. Can we come to the conclusion tonight? It didn't matter.
Well, you know, when we talk about money in races, we're going to have to face the fact that it's not the full explainer everyone thinks it is. If money beat Russ Feingold in Wisconsin, why isn't it beating Jerry Brown in California? Why didn't Linda McMahon's money? She spent more per vote than anyone running in this country. Linda McMahon spent $37 a vote. Why didn't that money work? This is about real candidates. This is about real positions they've taken, especially if they're incumbents like Russ Feingold. And to pretend that voting on Russ Feingold has nothing to do with his record as an incumbent, I think is to ignore the reality of life on the ballot as a Democrat in Wisconsin and a liberal Democrat.
Then where did he let Wisconsin down in Wisconsin?
This I don't know. I'm not saying I know, but I'm not going to jump to the notion that, oh, all they did was bring in money and that was the end of them, because that did not destroy Jerry Brown. That did not destroy Blumenthal.
No, but look
money
at what's
doesn't
been happening
always
in
win.
Wisconsin. The incumbent Democratic governor there has a 27% approval rating, $7 billion state budget deficit, state furloughs, big tax hikes.
What does it have to do with a popular United States senator if he's popular?
That's what I'm saying, is that there are down ticket effects. I think that happens. I think that's why we're going to see the Democrat have it.
In 1994, the Democratic senator was reelected easily. In the same state.
If you have a thesis about why Russ Feingold is losing,
I don't.
I would love to hear it. My thesis is that there are other wins that explain what just happened. In terms of what could have happened differently in that race, we can counterfactual it. If you really believe he could have campaigned his way out of this race, I would love to hear how he could have campaigned differently in a more effective way, but I just don't see it.
A liberal was defeated by a Republican, by voters who had information about this one being a liberal, this one being a Republican. We have to then assume the voters are completely irrational and don't know what they're doing, or we assume they do know the difference between a liberal and a Republican, and they made that choice based on him being a liberal and him being a Republican, money being whatever it was in that situation.
With the postmortems to resume, let's look at what still is going on in those critical and tight races. We mentioned Illinois foremost among them, in Pennsylvania. Chuck Todd, looking at this election by the numbers, with, as the line from Citizen Kane goes, with the church counties still to report. Chuck, where is that vote not yet in from in these key Senate races?
Well, as you know, one more Senate seat that Democrats win here: Pennsylvania, Illinois, Colorado, California, or Washington, and they will likely hold the Senate because they're heavily favored to hold Hawaii. Let me show you what's going on in Pennsylvania. Here, I can tell you this: Toomey has pulled ahead. Sestak folks ought to be a little bit nervous here because all of Philadelphia is basically in, and he is not going to have a 300,000 vote margin out of Philadelphia. That said, our numbers, folks, tell us this is going to be decided by less than 1% at this point. Let me take you to Illinois Senate. Wondering what is going on there? Well, right now, I think Mark Kirk has a very narrow lead. I can tell you this: his district has come in big for him, the collar counties, as they're known, outside of Chicago. But again, our modeling shows that this could be decided by less than 1%. One of those, we're going to let all the vote come in there. And then finally, let me take you to the really two close governor's races that everybody's been asking me about tonight. One is in Ohio, as to why this hasn't been called, even though the Kasich margin looks fairly large. There's a lot of vote left still in Cuyahoga County, home of Cleveland. So that's important to know. And also in Florida, folks are probably wondering why this race hasn't been called, because Rick Scott seems to have a decent-sized lead for 81% in. Guess what? A lot of Palm Beach County hasn't reported, and the senior vote in South Florida is one that the Scott folks thought they would lose a lot of because of all those allegations about the very large billion-dollar Medicare fraud fine that he had to pay, and Alex Sink was counting on that. By the way, guys, I want to give you a quick update in the House world in this front. The old bulls that we've been following, a couple of them have already lost. Rick Boucher, which we've told you about, he was elected in 1982. Those Reagan midterms that Democrats did so well, he's gone. Look at Ched Edwards in Texas. This guy's a 20-year veteran. He's gone. I want to take you to Missouri 4 and Ike Skelton. This race hasn't yet been called, but he has been trailing here. There we go. Get our numbers here. Vicki Hartzler, as you can see, she's got an 8,000 vote lead. A lot of the vote in, 86%. He could go down tonight. Let me take you to one more, John Spratt. We haven't called this race. He's been trailing all night. We're getting close to calling this race, but not yet. They're waiting for some key precincts with heavy African-American vote that may yet pull Spratt out, but he's been trailing all night. And then let me take you to the longest-serving member of Congress, the most famous name perhaps in the Democratic caucus these days. That is John Dingell in the 15th district here in Michigan. Looks like he's going to survive, but this has been very narrow. Look at this. Less than 4,000 votes separate him. Lots of Ann Arbor is still not reported. This probably bails him out, but I'll tell you, it is very close. He may be the lone old bull to survive, but I heard, Chris Matthews, I heard you shaking your head there. Ike Skelton, Ched Edwards, Rick Boucher. These are big names in the Democratic caucus.
Yeah, I've seen this happen before. You have this wave, and all of a sudden, even guys, politicians who have had this tremendous connection with their local people. Just remember, though, every year there's new 18-year-olders coming into the system, new people that don't know you, don't pay much attention to politics generally, and they want to express an attitude this time. And a lot of this election this year is attitude. It's not deep ideological shifting. I don't think you're seeing the Republican Party celebrating its identity tonight. It's more like taking advantage of an annual or a biannual, whatever, a turn of events here. The events suck for the Democrats right now, and that's the key reality. The unemployment rate.
Chuck Todd, Inside the Numbers. Thanks much for those, Chuck. We'll check back with you later in the hour. One other note, though, to balance what you said about the younger voters. There was a note from the New York Times exit polling earlier tonight that said that 1/4 of voters were 65 and older. So there's also a backlash from these essentially.
No, the Democratic Party benefits from the younger voters. I'm just talking about new faces, new people. I'm trying this idea of an old bull has somehow have this permanent advantage. Sooner or later, people begin to forget you.
One good bit of news for you. Speaking of old bull, Michelle Bachmann has been reelected.
Well, that was probably the result of her decision. Now, this is scary about politics. Not to concentrate on substantive bread and butter issues at home, but to go around the country as a troubadour, as I said, and becoming this sort of outrageous spokesperson for the Tea Party crowd. And it's worked for her at home, obviously. Well, not a lot, but yeah, it's enough.
Michelle Bachmann, of
She'll
course.
be there for a while.
I want to know if she's going to keep talking about re-education camps and internment camps and a one-world currency. There's rumors that she's going to try for Mike Pence's leadership seat if Pence does not keep that seat for other reasons because he's got other ambitions. If she tries for it, does she keep talking about a one-world currency?
Oh, no.
No, she'll be talking about debt ceiling legislation.
Oh, please.
She'll have to go around the floor getting other members to vote for debt ceiling.
A perfect opportunity for us to take our break. We'll continue with our midterms coverage right after this. While we continue to await guidance on the Senate races, let's look at the governors at this point, and there's a lot of red up there. They made pronounced efforts throughout the country on the state houses, and the changes, the switches to the Republicans include Oklahoma and Kansas and Wyoming and Wisconsin and Michigan and Tennessee, and of course, probably the biggest of them all, Pennsylvania. Howard Feynman, who's been at the Listening Post all night, is indicating to us that it is a big night for Haley Barbour, and that's why is it a big night for Haley Barbour, other than that all nights are big nights for Haley Barbour?
Well, he's big for all nights.
He's big for all nights. Well, Haley, Haley's been very quietly going around collecting chits for guess what, a presidential campaign. I understand he was on Morning Joe this morning denying any, that he'd thought about being president. That's true. He hasn't thought about it. He's studied the heck out of it and is already doing it. He's head of the Republican Governors Association. He's gone around and had dinner with and raised money with and counsel with and had heart-to-heart talks with all the Republican gubernatorial candidates, many of whom are winning. One of the things that's going to be really important at the end of tonight, I think, guys, is that it's possible that the Republicans, if they win Ohio, are going to have a sort of uninterrupted arc of governorships all the way from New Jersey, from the Atlantic Ocean, all the way up through the Great Lakes, which is absolutely crucial in the presidential races to come, not to mention places like Florida, if they hang on and win that, and South Carolina, which is so important in the Republican primary world. So Haley Barbour out of Mississippi, who got good reviews for some of what he did at Katrina and his work on other things like the oil spill, and who was once head of the Republican Party, is a very serious, if quiet at this point, presidential candidate. And I know that he's going to be on stage tonight, and he'll be around tomorrow in Washington, D.C. And in that whole roster of governors who are going to be looking at running for the presidency, he's one that most people haven't thought of a lot, but he's going to have a lot of friends among the new governors. One that
has not been thought of and will not be in that list is Carl Palladino, Howard, and because he didn't win, and he didn't win by a lot. And if we need a pick-me-up right now, Mr. Palladino is giving his concession speech, and I'm getting my popcorn. Let's listen.
Thank you, please. Got to put that one on us.
He's going to reveal himself as a performance artist.
Oh, God.
I'm humbled. I just wanted to say a few words tonight after a hard-fought campaign.
Campaign, my wife and daughters, for their hard work in the campaign trail.
My best friend, Billy, my son, for taking over the company on such short notice. And my son-in-law, Luke, for putting up with for putting up with me. With this campaign, we've galvanized New York State voters with a policy message that reflects the desires of all New Yorkers. Lower taxes, less government spending, more accountability and transparency of state government, and the end of insider political dealings in Albany. Last year, with the unexpected and remarkable ascent of the Tea Party, we saw the passion of regular people spill into the streets. I shared their feelings. We're frustrated with big government. We're tired of our politicians spending like drunken sailors and giving us weak elected representatives. We're tired of the backroom deals and contempt for the will of the people. We're tired of government suffocating the potential and the promise of the individual. And yes, I joined the Tea Party movement for the same reason I joined the United States Army, because I love my country.
Well, at the risk of hearing or missing a statement by Mr. Palladino about some story about a drunken sailor, that is where we will leave this brief vignette into one of the more remarkable campaigns for Governor of New York, one of the more dubious elected offices in the free world, decided by quite a lot tonight in favor of the second governor, Cuomo. On the subject of governors, the former governor, or still the governor, the term-limited governor of Pennsylvania, Ed Rendell, joins us now. And Governor, we thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Keith.
Obviously, it was that your seat was not retained, your chair was not retained by the party. Your reaction to that?
Well, I'm unfortunate in the sense that Dan Honorado, our candidate, was a good guy with good progressive policies. He ran a great campaign, but he just got swamped by money, In the last week of the campaign, Tom Corbett, the Republican, raised $6 million, and it was just too much to overcome. The good news is Joe Sestak is waging an incredible battle. It's very close, and 40% of Montgomery County, which is a suburban Philadelphia county, is outstanding. Chris will know about that, and I think Joe Sestak will run very well there. So that's up in the air, clearly up in the air.
Let me ask you about Pennsylvania Democratic Party. You're a Philly guy. You do incredibly well in the Philadelphia area, the southeastern Pennsylvania area, not so well in the T. How does the Democratic Party become a stronger party in the state? How does it become more statewide? What's it got to do so a guy like Sestak can win?
Well, it's got to perform. And Chris, I wouldn't take too much out of this election. I think we were faced with the worst economic conditions since the Great Depression. And I think whenever that happens in the nation's history, the party that's in power gets clobbered. Look at John Lynch in New Hampshire. Won 2 years ago with over 70% of the vote. And I know he won tonight, but he won by just a handful of percentage points. It just is out there, and it's very difficult to overcome that. I think you can win by performing. In my first term as governor, we went and did a lot of good things all around the state, invested money in roads, bridges, infrastructure, economic development. Our economy has been better than the national average for almost my entire time as governor. And I went from carrying 15 counties, almost all in the southeast when I won the first time, to carrying 33 counties in my reelection. And a lot of those counties were in Republican rural areas, but we invested wisely in those areas like nobody else had ever done, and the people rewarded us. We've got to govern well. We have to continue to spend money and invest money, but invest it wisely, use it effectively, implement it well. That's the key to proving that Democrats and progressives can make government work. I would have loved to run for re-election this year, as tough as it was, and I would have had a tough fight. I would have loved to make the case that the things we've done, the investments we've made in education, in infrastructure, in energy, have changed the face of Pennsylvania. Obviously, I didn't get that chance, and it would have been tough for me given the national trend and the wave. But Democrats have to talk about the things we do to make government better, to make life better for people. I think the Obama administration, Chris, has done a lot of great things. Credit card reform, great for people. Student loan reform, great for our young kids. Financial reform, expanding CHIP by 10 million young kids. So many good things, not even getting into health care and stimulus. We just didn't sell them.
When is the Democratic Party going to be a building party again instead of just a check-writing party?
Well, a building party...
You know the problem. The party used to build things. They built America. They built everything. They built everything in Washington, everything in the big cities, the subway systems, the train systems. They believed in public investment in building things. 30th Street Station. Sure. It wouldn't be there with this current mentality. The current mentality is write some checks and get out of the way. Cut some taxes, don't do anything.
Chris, who's the #1 advocate for rebuilding
You are,
this
but
country's infrastructure?
It doesn't seem like we can't even catch up to the French. They've got the TGV. They've got the China. We got nothing anymore. The Chinese are beating us. 300 miles an hour trains. We're
Chris,
going tooting along at 60 miles an hour on Amtrak. It's a joke because America doesn't build anymore.
When we build something, we not only create the jobs on the building site, we revitalize American manufacturing, and we need to revitalize steel and concrete and asphalt and agri and all those things.
We're building Moynihan Station in New York to connect to what? What's it going to connect to?
Don't get me started.
I'm sorry, because I just don't see the Democrats having the confidence to build stuff again. Have a capital budget and say we got to build again.
Yeah, the problem is, Chris, is we're afraid. And I said a couple of weeks ago that Democrats are wussies, and we are wussies, and most of the guys who voted against health care lost. Am I right?
Yeah, well, okay, well, maybe that was a lack of tangible success in building things again.
Right,
it's
and
a promissory note, maybe.
We've got to get out there and say we can rebuild this country. We can create jobs. Government can be a catalyst for doing it. Right now, with all the talk of the deficit, with all the talk about taxes, jobs is the #1 thing on the minds of Pennsylvanians, and we have to respond to that.
Replace the smell of decay with the smell of construction.
Absolutely.
People love the smell of a job site.
Absolutely.
They do. We don't see anything anymore. The Golden Gate Bridge would never be built under this crowd. Nothing would get built.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more.
I think Ed Rendell's neighboring governor in New Jersey is vetoing the building of a necessary new tunnel connecting New York and New Jersey. I mean, we haven't done this in 100 years, and to think that our transportation needs haven't changed since we built the last tunnel.
Is New Jersey going it alone?
No, I mean, that's the Republican notion of where we go from here.
But let me suggest, Lawrence, that there's a part of what Christie's saying makes sense. The cost overruns in these projects are disgraceful. Right. The time that it takes for environmental impact statements that should be cut in half is disgraceful. It causes the prices to go up. We've got to, Chris Christie's right about one thing. We've got to spend our money more effectively and more wisely and target it well. But he's wrong about stopping this project. He should demand accountability and go ahead with the project. But he's not entirely wrong. And look, there is limited money to spend. We've got to spend it well, but we can do it. And unless we do big things, Chris, and you're absolutely right, unless we do big things, we are destined to become a second-rate economic power. And this Congress, whoever controls it, this Congress better get to work. We cannot have 2 years of political posturing for the next election, or else we're going to hell in a handbasket.
When you listen to the White House say what they think they can still make constructive progress on, they say it's education, they say it's energy, bizarrely, and they say it's infrastructure. That's what the White House is articulating, are areas where they think they can move forward with Republicans. And then you listen to Republicans talk about those things. And
they want to abolish the Department of Energy. They want to start there on energy.
Right. Abolish the Department of Energy. The people who promoted cap and trade is a Republican idea. The people who promoted it now denouncing it as not only a bad idea, but unconstitutional, socialist, and evil. I mean, the idea that Republicans would come around on energy is impossible to imagine at this point. The White House seems to think that they might.
I think the White House
infrastructure is something that where Republicans will win Democrats.
I think the White House knows it's impossible, but the White House
is trying to get in here.
Rachel, I feel your pain, but can I offer a concrete proposal that I think would get Republican votes? Cap and trade, we don't have the votes for anymore. That's clear. Let's do renewable energy. Let's invest in renewable energy. Let's do a national portfolio standard. Let's make the tax credits permanent for renewable energy. Let's up the R&D for renewable energy. Those are all good things that will create jobs in what is going to be the part of the economy that will drive the world's economy in the next 20 years. We can get votes for that. We ought to be doing it.
The Tea Party is already denouncing the whole idea of green jobs as a Marxist myth.
You just got Ron Johnson elected in Wisconsin over Russ Feingold, a climate change denier who spent $6 million of his own dollars to get himself in the Senate to take that position that Rachel just spelled out.
I feel your pain, but I do think we can make some progress in this field. I mean, look, there's a great saying, it is what it is. It is what it is. We have to deal with it. So I think we stake out some goals that maybe are achievable. On infrastructure, do you know who authored an op-ed piece with me? Jim Inhofe, saying that infrastructure spending is the second most important thing the government can spend money on. Jim Inhofe. So we can't stop trying. We've got to make this thing work in the next 2 years because the economy is stagnating. And Chris, you're right. We've got to do big things. We've got to repair
One last thought. The President of the United States is speaking tomorrow at 1 o'clock. What I dread is he'll come out there with a teleprompter. He'll have a speech. We don't need any more speeches. There's no action in these words anymore. They're just words. They're not action words. Is there something he should say he's going to do? Whether it's hire a real chief of staff, a heavyweight, a cabinet-level COO to run this government, something that gives us a sense of action, that we're going to do things. Oh, I'm just answering the question. What do you think you got to do tomorrow, 1 o'clock in the afternoon? That seems different than all the words, like Henry Higgins have been going on now for months. Your thoughts?
I'll tell you, I haven't even told anybody in the White House this because I'm not necessarily the person they listen to, but
that's why I'm asking you.
I would, if we could persuade him to do it, I'd announce Colin Powell as chief of staff.
Thank you.
I think Colin Powell could bring maybe the Republicans and Democrats together. He's got the stature
there'll
to
be
get
nothing
it
to
done.
announce tomorrow.
That's not going to happen.
The man most famous in his last iteration in government for getting rolled by the ways of Washington.
There's no question. But Rachel, there are no perfect choices. There are no perfect choices.
Yeah,
if you were president, would you want me as your chief of staff?
Well, I would because you're an executive. I think you need a look. This government needs to start doing things. Democrats claim to be the governing party. Well, you better damn well be good at government. That's what your party's good at.
Right.
They believe in government. The Republican Party doesn't. So if you believe in something, you got to prove its effectiveness. And I don't think this president has done that yet. I think there's been too much. Gee whiz, go up to the Hill, let them put together something called a stimulus bill. Throw together what everybody wants. Cats and dogs. Let Opie do it. And nobody says what's actually real about it. Something you can look around the corner. Oh, there it is. There's the job creation program. You know, it's not there. That's a thought.
And we are dependent to some extent on the other side, obviously. The perfect example of frustration was the small business bill. Republicans talk about small business forever, and yet when we put a bill up, $30 billion in lending for small banks to give to small businesses, elimination of capital gains tax. We barely got one vote in the Senate. It took George Voinovich, a good man, frustrated, to end the filibuster on that bill. If they don't go for that, what are they going to go for? That's my level of frustration. We got to be honest about this, and we got to try to make it work. But how could they not have been for that bill?
You know, Governor, you're the best case I've come across in my late lifetime so far that exemplifies public service. We had the college tour last week at Temple. You should have seen the hand this guy got. They still think you're mayor of Philadelphia. I'm telling you, this guy is public service. This is the guy.
Governor Ed Rendell of Pennsylvania, great thanks. And just for the record, I want to underscore that you asked Rachel what she would do about chief of staff if she were president, not Chris. Just so we.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Governor.
See you guys.
What, did I get the wrong answer?
No offense. No, just you jumped in when he asked her.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He gave me a great business idea, though.
Rachel's answer will be available online.
That's
a perfume called Eau de Job Site.
You know, I stole that line from David Garth.
Speaker Presumptive Boehner will be speaking we expect, the next half hour. We're going to take a break in anticipation.
We'll take a half-hour break.
Don't encourage them. We'll be back. Stay with us. I don't know. Maybe he'll bring gifts for everybody, or he'll be more entertaining than Carl Palladino or Christine O'Donnell. That's not possible. I'm overselling it. Our coverage continues after this. Hard numbers to look at from Nevada, and the reason it's too early to call with Harry Reid up by 9% is that a lot of that vote is Reno and Las Vegas, where reports are provided electronically. We're advised by our NBC and MSNBC correspondent John Yang at Reid headquarters that the rural counties still report by fax. So if you're wondering who you can still send a fax to, They are the county election boards in rural Nevada. I don't remember what happened to my last fax, but there it is. Nonetheless, that is a 9-point lead with more than 50% of the vote in for Harry Reid over Sharon Angle. So let's start here as we wait for John Boehner's speech as the first speech as the presumptive Speaker-elect of the House. I'm mixing my terms here. Let's stick to Harry Reid and to his headquarters and our Ed Schultz. So this was the whispering confidence that you heard about. Was that is that reflected in this first set of numbers, Ed?
Well, Keith, you're one of the most popular guys out here right now when you put that number up here, because this place erupted. Yes, it has gone from a quiet confidence to a whisper to now an outright confidence. For Harry Reid to be leading early on against Sharon Angle in her own hometown is a great start early on for Harry Reid. I understand we got Mr. Boehner coming up.
Indeed. I'm going to have to interrupt you to bring you Speaker-elect presumptive Boehner's speech in Washington. Here he is.
NRCC, along with his sidekick, Greg Walden. They have done a marvelous job on behalf of our team. And I want to thank all of our candidates, our supporters, our volunteers who've worked so hard to make this moment possible. Let me just say this. It's clear tonight who the winners really are, and that's the American people. It was the American people's voice that was heard at the ballot box, the American people's voice. And listen, I'm going to be brief because we've got real work to do, and frankly, this is not a time for celebration. Not when 1 out of 10 of our fellow citizens is out of work, not when we've buried our children under a mountain of debt, and not when our Congress is held in such low esteem. This is a time to roll up our sleeves, a time to look forward with determination, and to take the first steps toward building a better future for our kids and our grandkids. Across the country right now, we're witnessing a repudiation of Washington, a repudiation of big government, and a repudiation of politicians who refuse to listen to the American people. Of course, this campaign's not over yet. To the folks out west where the polls may still be open, this is the time to seize that moment and make sure your voice is heard, to reject the spending sprees, the bailouts, the backroom deals, the takeovers, and all the nonsense, and to join your fellow Americans in putting Washington on notice. Because for far too long, Washington's been doing what's best for Washington, not what's best for the American people. And tonight, that begins to change. With their voices, the American people are demanding a new way forward in Washington. I'm here to tell you tonight that our new majority will be prepared to do things differently, to take a new approach that hasn't been tried in Washington before by either party. It starts with cutting spending instead of increasing it. Reducing the size of government instead of increasing it. And reforming the way Congress works and giving the government back to the American people. And for all those families who were asking, where are the jobs? It means ending the uncertainty in our economy and helping small businesses get back to work. The people's priorities will be our priorities. And the people's agenda will be our agenda. This is our pledge to America, and this is our pledge to you. While our new majority will serve as your voice in the people's house, we must remember it's the president who sets the agenda for our government. The American people have sent an unmistakable message to him tonight, and that message is change course. We hope President Obama will now respect the will of the people, change course, and to commit to making changes that they are demanding. And to the extent that he's willing to do that, we're ready to work with him. But make no mistake, the president will find in our new majority the voice of the American people as they've expressed it tonight, standing on principle, checking Washington's power, and leading the drive to a smaller, less costly, and more accountable government here in Washington, D.C. These are the principles our new majority will stand for. And we hope that, Mr. President, you'll stand with us in the hard work that lies ahead. Because we are humbled by the trust that the American people have placed in us, and we recognize that with this trust comes the responsibility to listen, and listen we will. Let's start right now by recognizing that this is not a time for celebration. It's a time to roll up our sleeves and go to work. We can celebrate when small businesses begin hiring again. We can celebrate when the spending binge here in Washington has stopped. And we can celebrate when we have a government that has earned the trust of the people that it serves. When we have a government that honors the Constitution and stands up for the values that have made America, America. Things like economic freedom, individual liberty, and personal responsibility. Listen, I hold these values dear because I've lived them. I spent my whole life chasing the American dream. I started out mopping floors, waiting tables, and tending bar at my dad's tavern. I put myself through school, working every rotten job there was, and in every night shift I could find. And I poured my heart and soul into running a small business. And when I saw how out of touch Washington had become with the core values of this great nation, I put my name forward and ran for office. So I'm going to thank my wife, Debbie, my girls, Lindsay and Tricia, my 11 brothers and sisters, and all my friends and neighbors in Ohio for giving me the chance to serve and the opportunity to stand before you ready to lead. Thank all of you. God bless you, and God bless our great country.
Not to rain on anybody's parade, but I was led to believe it would be the Democrats who'd be crying tonight. Just one thing, not to question his sincerity in that, but to hear a career politician talk about Washington not listening. He's been in Washington since 1991, and he started in politics the year after I started in television. And at this point, I like to think of myself as a really old-timer in television. Yeah. He's a really old-timer in politics. Having said that, and adding the one thing that we all agree on, that the best political impression, all respect to Tina Fey, the best political impression done by any current performer is Dan Aykroyd's version of John Boehner. Let's skip on because we have a result to report to you from the California Senate race, where NBC News' decision desk, Dr. Freud, predicts the outcome of this race and forecasts it for Barbara Boxer, the incumbent in the really a lot of money was spent on this campaign for the Senate seat in California that has been hers and is hers once again at 1/5 of the vote. She has already a 135,000 margin over the challenger Carly Fiorina. So the California Senate retained by the Democrats.
Looking at the performance of Carly Fiorina and Meg Whitman, it's remarkable. They're so identified with the John McCain campaign, and just neither of their candidacies going anywhere. And
that pretty much eliminates any chance for the Republicans to take the Senate as well.
Well, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger just elected Democratic. He did. He did. California voted on someone who'd never done this before. It created a disaster. Arnold Schwarzenegger is so unpopular now in California. Gray Davis, the person he beat in the recall, polls more popularly than Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Californians voted for people who know how to do this and against Arnold Schwarzenegger.
The ad that Jerry Brown put up against Meg Whitman that just contrasted Schwarzenegger's words with her words, the exact same phrases, was brilliant. And that, I mean, if the election hadn't been won,
if Schwarzenegger had done a great job as governor, Whitman would have sailed in there.
Yeah.
We have yet to see that race, the governor's race, but the Senate race, as we said, decided in California. Backing up to where we started with Ed Schultz, the first half, the city half, the urban half of the Nevada Senate race is counted already with, again, as we said, coming to you by fax sooner rather than later, we hope, the rural voting. So let's pick up where we were at on this subject of what they're making now. Now we're up to 57% of the vote, and it's still an 8-point margin for Harry Reid.
Well, this means that Sharon Angle is going to have a real strong showing in rural Nevada. And the Reid camp is very enthusiastic right now because the early returns are showing that Harry Reid is leading in Washoe County, which of course has the city of Reno, the hometown of Sharon Angle. And for Harry Reid to be leading there is a very good sign. And so this quiet confidence has turned into a whisper, is now starting to turn into yells. They are smelling the victory here in the Reid Hall tonight here in Las Vegas. 70% of Clark County accounts for, that much of a vote out of the state of Nevada. I mean, this is going to be a huge victory for the Democrats if Harry Reid can hang on. Never in the history of our country have we seen so much money poured in to try to take out a Democratic candidate. Karl Rove is from Sparks, Nevada. He, of course, has personally invested a lot of time and money into trying to defeat Harry Reid, spending a lot of his time focusing on this race because they want to take off the head of the Democratic Party. They want to get it at the head. They want to get the soul, and they want to force the Democrats to go behind closed doors and have that fight as to who's going to lead the party next. If Harry Reid can do this, this is real resilience. No question about it.
Hey, give me the ground game out there. We've been watching the ads. Give me the ground game. Which unions, if this comes out as a tight victory for Harry, which unions have been on the ground actually delivering in the GOTV here?
Well, the Service Employees International Union has been very strong out here, Chris. The steelworkers also have been very good. AFSCME, they collectively have done a great ground game for Harry Reid. There's a real parallel between the Daschle and Reid, or should I say there's not a parallel, because all of the mistakes that they made in South Dakota, they knew this onslaught of effort from the Republicans was coming. So they organized early on. This is probably the most sophisticated ground game that the Democrats have ever had. And this has been the money versus the ground game. Not to say that Harry had any money, but the fact of the matter is the AFL-CIO put in a lot of resources here. They got after it big time. They went door to door. They did the phone banking. They did the mailing. They did the town hall meetings. And one of the strategies with the Reid camp was to try to get Harry out with a smile on his face, because this tough job in Washington of dealing with the finances and dealing with foreign policy and dealing with education, dealing with health care. When you see Harry Reid, he's always got this real serious look on his face. And all of a sudden they think, well, Harry's kind of a tough guy to talk to. No, Harry Reid's a nice guy. And so what they've tried to do here, especially in the last month, is to get Harry with a smile on his face. He came on our show and said, hey, my door's open in Searchlight, Nevada. He's done everything he can to say, I'm from Nevada. I love this state. Dick Durbin was on the program the other night. He says, I want everybody to know that Harry Reid loves his state. He'll do anything for his state. But, it's interesting. You always talk to the cab drivers, because the cab drivers seem to know what the heck is going on. They've been somewhat amused by all of this. They say, we're just a small state with a few electoral votes. What the heck's this all about? We've known Harry for a long time. It's just a lot of us don't like him. So this race has got more personality in it, and it's not all Sharon Angle.
Let me ask you about the women. I always think of Vegas out there. This is important to me. Working women out there. When you go to Vegas, not everybody's having a great time. A lot of people that do the work, the scut work out there, cocktail waitresses, people working in the casino, a lot of those jobs don't pay a ton of money, I don't think. They are organized labor people, right? Which unions are those?
Yes.
Which unions are the ones, the restaurant workers? Who are they you meet out there in Clark County?
Well, it's the Service Employees International Union, AFL-CIO.
Yeah.
They put a big effort. You see, the one thing about that, they were saying if they lose Harry Reid, they have no chance in Employee Free Choice Act. No chance. Now, obviously, they were hoping it was going to be a different outcome in the House. So the outcome in the House tonight means there will be no Employee Free Choice Act. That is totally off the table. That is a non-negotiable issue with the Republicans. But it was those service workers that have been so diligent, and the Latino vote is going to come in strong, I believe. The get out to vote effort with the Latinos and the African Americans, it's going to make a big difference. But the early voting, and that ground game I was talking about, 380,000 votes cast early on in a state of less than 2.9 million people. That's a hell of an effort. That's a great turnout. There is the number.
In the minute we have left here, we've got to go out to Howard Feynman at the Listening Post for a little bit more from the Harry Reid campaign. Howard?
Yeah, I just want to say, having talked to one of Harry Reid's top people just a few minutes ago from here, what he said was another important factor here was that it was Harry Reid's idea to get the Democrats to hold a presidential primary there in 2008. And Harry Reid's idea in doing that was to help build up the muscles of the Democratic Party in Nevada in a state that didn't have a lot of party organization, especially on the Democratic side. Yeah. So that was crucial, and Harry Reid did that combined with the union effort that Chris was talking about. And one other factor, people got to know Sharon Angle the way they knew Harry Reid, and they didn't like what they saw in her.
Howard Feynman, thank you. We'll continue to watch the Nevada race. Also at the top of the hour, polls close in Hawaii. All the results when we continue. Midnight in the east, polls closed in Hawaii, and before you say, well, all right, first off, Hawaii is not there exactly. Also, it's much bigger tonight in terms of the Democrats and the Senate, because let's look at our NBC News projection for the state of Hawaii, which has existed since 1959, and this man has represented it in the Senate since 1962 and will continue to do so, the World War II veteran, Daniel Inouye. And what this means, well, all right, let's look at the latest from Pennsylvania. Too close to call with only 10% yet to be counted. Wow. How extraordinary. 62,000 votes, the Republican Toomey in the lead. Illinois, 81,000 votes. Kirk ahead, 8% left to be counted. Colorado, also too close to call, 49% yet to be counted. Difference of 35,000 for Mr. Bennett, the incumbent, the Democrat. Nevada, 60% in, and the margin is still holding at 7% as the rural counties begin to get counted in Nevada. Washington State, too early to call, 2-point lead, with more than half in for the incumbent, Senator Patty Murray, against the Dino Rossi's challenge on the part of the Republican Party. The pickups for the Republicans become less important now than what Inouye's re-election means, because there are 4 Senate pickups for the Republicans, plus Inouye's victory. Let's do that. Look at the new Senate to date. The numbers will be somewhat indicative. 48 plus 2 equals, anyone? 50. Bueller? 50. So the Senate, presuming Joe Lieberman does not declare himself a Republican or decides not to continue to caucus with the Democrats, and we know Bernie Sanders, the independent from Vermont, will not do that. What Inouye's victory, or the declaration of it, our projection of it, means is that it is certain that Democratic control, at least nominally, will continue through tonight or some declaration by Mr. Lieberman. And if the Democrats prevail in Pennsylvania or Washington or Colorado or Alaska, they will have 49 firm seats, plus Sanders, plus Lieberman. So Hawaii, small state on the map, big state in terms of control of the Senate at this hour. any prospect of Joe Lieberman becoming a Republican other than in practice?
Absolutely.
They'll offer him the world.
He's
They'll
not going
offer
to do
him
that.
everything.
I mean, he considers himself fundamentally a Democrat, and I don't ever see him switching. He enjoys torturing progressive Democrats far too much to ever switch parties.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I think he won the general after losing the primary to Ned Lamont with working class regular Democrats. The Irish, Italian guys, the blacks.
No,
the regular Democrats still thought of him as a Democrat, I think. That's why I think it happened.
Now, you know, the exit polls have some very helpful information to Harry Reid about the Tea Party in Nevada. Nationwide, the Tea Party, to my eye, is surprisingly popular with these voters this year. 41% in exit polls are saying they feel favorably about the Tea Party, 41%. Texas, it's 47%. That's the most popular they are in any state. Vermont, 25%. That's the least popular. New York State, the Tea Party has a favorable rating of 37%, which is virtually identical to the favorable rating of the Tea Party in Nevada. Nevada, it's at 38. New York, it's at 37. In other words, the Tea Party is of below average strength in Nevada. That is bad news for Sharon Engel trying to win a Tea Party victory in Nevada.
That's a lot of sound bites to create that effect in Nevada. And it's also fascinating, just as an aside, in New York, that does mean that the Tea Party theoretically outperformed or about matched the Republican candidate, Mr. Palladino, for governor, who was running on that under that umbrella. And one thing, just as an aside, just as a laugh before we return to our continuing analysis of what's going on and the latest from Nevada as that race tightens as expected. When we gave you the concession speech of Carl Palladino, it was with a heavy heart that we left that in progress for the prospect that we would be seeing something, for want of a better word, wonderful. Fortunately, we recorded the rest of his concession speech, and he produced something wonderful.
Oh, we have it.
Yes, we do.
I have a message for Andrew Cuomo, the next governor of New York. I've always said my baseball bat is a metaphor for the people who want to take their government back. But this isn't my bat, after all. As our next governor, you can grab this handle and bring the people with you to Albany. Or you can leave it untouched and run the risk of having it wielded against you. Because make no mistake, you have not heard the last of Carl Palladino.
Oh, my.
What's that mean? He's going to take him out?
The exact same thing that Christine O'Donnell issuing demands from the podium meant tonight, which is that losing by 17 points and losing by 25 points apparently has nothing to do with the aforementioned people. And concession, the idea of a concession is lost all meaning.
Isn't there a post 9/11 federal statute, something about terroristic threats? I don't know.
I was waiting for Carl Smash, and we didn't get that. I also must say, just from a sports perspective, no self-respecting adult of either gender is caught with an orange baseball bat.
Well, that is
the speech was in a teleprompter. This was a premeditated word-for-word speech.
Yeah, and this was the way he planned to respond on television to losing by 25 points.
And to respond to the image that he's crazy and maybe violent.
Well, he did obviously learn Mr. Roosevelt's lesson about walk softly and carry a big stick, and there it was.
He at least learned the big stick part.
The big stick part. Walk softly
about 35% of the vote, which he seems to be getting, is roughly precisely the popularity level of the Tea Party in the state of New York.
And the state of Nevada.
And the state of
which
Nevada.
brings us back to that topic and the West Coast and the sentiment that the Senate is safe for the Democrats. It's unlikely that the Republicans are going to run the table in the remaining five Senate seats tonight. Any disagreement with that?
Very unlikely.
They could.
I don't. You know, they could, but I doubt that they will. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean,
Reid showed up.
The Party has cost them the Senate.
Right, exactly.
Let's try to remember that they have. I've only got a list. They haven't. The Tea Party is not responsible for a single victory, a single pickup so far tonight. May not be even you count Toomey. Toomey was a plug for growth, or long before there's ever a Tea Party. He is what he is, sui generis to some extent. But the rest of the party has only been an embarrassment. Like this guy we just saw, like Christine O'Donnell. I get maybe they've given him some internal energy, but they haven't given him sort of saleability.
check this out. This is a full analysis of those Tea Party candidates whose races have already been decided. 35 is an impressive number. 35 is an extraordinary number. You can't look at 35 in isolation without looking at that 54. This is
house races.
House and everything included. That's the whole picture. 35, 54. Perhaps a net help of some energization, as you've suggested, to the Republican cause, but clearly, as we keep going back to it, cost them the House and the Senate in Delaware, both of those seats.
I think it's fair in the House because I think that Boehner, as we saw with his emotional response, was totally surprised by all this. It's really not of his making. This whole victory came about from the Tea Party explosion within the House. But at the Senate level, where you really get to know the candidate on television, you get to take a good look at them, their personality, what the makeup is, not just their ideological profile, but who they are, which is often an embarrassment in this case. Tea Party people on the right side of the profile, given the current economic situation. But once you get to meet them, you go, wait a minute, no, not this one.
Yeah, the Christine O'Donnell vote.
Not the guy with the bat and not the witch.
The Christine O'Donnell vote in the non-witch, please.
No,
the Christine O'Donnell, but the Christine O'Donnell vote total in Delaware was, what, 60,000 votes more than she got in the primary? So all of that was to get an additional 60,000 votes. So I'm underrating it a little bit. She had about 40,000 in the primary.
Luckiest man of the year. Here he is.
Chris Coons, who owes the Tea Party an extraordinary debt.
The United States Senator for 6 years.
Going to a really big underdog of several points to a 17% winner in Delaware. Thanks.
Well, again, the economic much, much worse for the Democrats this year than in 1994. Why wasn't the Republican victory this year much bigger? The Tea Party.
You look at also the ballot initiatives. Right now, there's a couple of scorched earth, cut taxes ballot initiatives voted on both in Massachusetts, and there were 3 separate ones in Colorado. Looks like they're all going down. They're all going down. So even if you take away the Tea Party candidates and their flaws and their intricacies out of this, and you just go to the pure issue, scorched earth, cut all the taxes, starve the government, drown the government in the bathtub, those things are losing too.
Across the board. Discretionary cuts.
That's right. Discretionary bathtub cuts. To follow that, Luke Russert, our Capitol Hill correspondent, is with us now from RNC headquarters in Washington, where I'm sure none of these details factor into the equation of how the Republicans feel tonight. Luke.
No, not indeed, Keith. Pretty vibrant atmosphere, a joyous atmosphere. A lot of staffers and volunteers from the NRCC just listened to John Boehner give a rousing speech and actually chanting USA, USA as Boehner was actually weeping. But the man who was responsible for delivering this massive Republican victory, right next to me is Deputy Minority Whip, Mr. Kevin McCarthy of California. What did you tap into to bring such a massive victory for the GOP tonight?
Well, I think it's not so much about the GOP. It's more against the direction of where the country's going right now. I mean, only in America are people given a second chance, and I think Republicans are about to be given a second chance. What the country will really be looking at is, will we do what we said we would do? And if you look about the candidates, a lot of them are first-time runners, from Stephen Fincher from Frog Jump, Tennessee. It's more a desire about the country itself, about jobs and about spending, than it is about some bridge in their district or anything from that point.
Now, you said in National Journal that tonight would not be a victory for us, more so a vote against the Obama administration and their policies. If we don't change and respect the voters, we won't get another chance for a generation. What do you have to change as a member of the GOP, and where does the party have to change this time around?
I think the party has to make sure they're always listening. I mean, I think one of the biggest things the country's saying is get the House in order, find solutions to problems, and more importantly, get the private sector working again. They can't maintain going Washington and it is, and change the culture of Washington. This idea that elitism, the idea that the arrogance of Washington, that people won't listen. So from a lot of standpoints, you'll find from just changing the House from how a bill is 72 hours to any member can bring up an amendment when it's a spending bill to curbing the spending itself and bringing something together. Look, I'm very hopeful. You know, in 1994, when we had a divided government, they were able to do welfare reform and others, able to work together. I think tomorrow's a new day. I know the president's going to have a press conference. I know in 94, Bill Clinton said the era of big government's over. This is a time that I think America's sending a message to all to solve a problem. Get America working again. And one key point that's different from 94 and 2006, unemployment back then was 5% and 4%.
This is the longest unemployment has been consecutively over 14 months since the 1930s.
But, sir, GOP Conference Chairman Mike Pence, as well as Mr. Boehner, have both said that right now is not a time for compromise. Do you see the GOP willing to compromise with the president on significant issues?
I see where we've laid out in the pledge. We don't think tax increases during a recession. We think you have to have the ability to bring in our spending. We've gone in 4 short years from a $161 billion deficit to $1.4 trillion. First time since the Budget Act of '74 has passed, we don't have a budget. There's a lot of things we can work together to solve the problems and move forward. I think listening to Boehner tonight, yeah, we have our principles, we have our mission of where we're laying out and what we'll fight for, and we want to see problems solved at the end of the day.
What's the first thing you think you can compromise on with President Obama in House and Senate Democrats?
Well, I think the first thing is no new taxes. You know, even before we left the House, 37 Democrats signed the letter, said they didn't want a tax increase during this time. I think America has spoken as well. So it's a time that we can move forward and get this country moving again. Take the uncertainty off the table. Well, there's no more what's hanging over there. Let that $1 trillion sitting on the sideline invest back in this country. Look, this is a unique night. There's a change in power inside Congress without one single shot being fired. Our Constitution works again. But from the same time, the American people are going to be watching very closely. And they're saying from both perspectives that you just had something swing very quickly. And from all respect, this is bigger than 1994. So they are really, the American public is really looking to see for a solution.
Now, you've said that okay, that's it, wrap. We're going back to you guys in the panel.
Rosser,
take care.
Thank you. Illinois has been decided for the Democrats. Correction, for the Republicans. Let's do that. Let's do that right now. The Senate in Illinois, it was trending into 90 and +% in terms of the vote on the board, and now NBC News can project Mark Kirk, the Republican, has defeated his young Democratic challenger, Alexei Janulius, 48-46 with 8% to be counted, an 84,000 vote margin, or 83,000 closer to it in Illinois. So the new Senate at this hour, there have been 5 Republican pickups. As we said earlier, the inoculation provided by Senator Inouye's re-election in Hawaii is coming into 4. There are 4 races still outstanding, if my math is correct, and we're expecting further details on Nevada throughout the evening. Alaska, I don't know when we'll have those numbers, frankly, and Colorado, and now Washington. Washington is still open. Pennsylvania may be coming close. We're hearing reports that Pat Toomey, the Republican candidate, is intending to speak shortly, even though that race has not been called universally. And when our coverage continues, we may be having Mr. Toomey speaking in advance of a full call on a too-close-to-call race from Pennsylvania. This is MSNBC. The Republicans have picked up another Senate seat. NBC News can project, governor seat, can project that John Kasich is the winner in Ohio. The raw vote total, yes, from Fox News. He'll just pack up his office there and move it back to the Capitol in Columbus. 49% of the vote, with 15% yet to be counted over the incumbent Democrat Ted Strickland. Meanwhile, in the Pennsylvania race, Associated Press has called it for Pat Toomey, although we have it still as too close to call. 74,000 the difference, with 10% of the vote yet to go. Mr. Toomey is speaking right now, having claimed earlier in the speech that Joe Sestak had called him to concede. Let's join Mr. Toomey, already in progress.
Beautiful little girl is our daughter, Bridget, and you know she agrees with me. And the big boy here is Patrick. And the person that I need to thank most of all is the person who makes my whole life possible. And she is the mother of our children. She is the rock that provides me with love and encouragement and support. And that is, of course, my wife, Chris. A huge thank you to really so many people who've supported this campaign in so many ways. We've been at this for 19 months. The people who sent in contributions, do you know there are over 72,000 people contributed to this effort? And so many came in envelopes with a check of $10 or $20 and often a little note inscribed. And I'm enormously grateful to everybody who made that personal sacrifice. The volunteers. tens of thousands of people across the Commonwealth who started so long ago circulating petitions to get my name on the ballot, and then they put up yard signs and made phone calls and went door to door and did all the hard work. I told you we needed all of that effort. And I am very grateful for all of that support. There's one gentleman that I do want to recognize who stepped up and agreed to play a major leadership role in my campaign, and I'm very grateful to him for all of his guidance and support and all the arm twisting he did, and that's Cliff Benson, who's here from Pittsburgh. But thank you. And I just have to take a minute to just tell you how enormously impressed and grateful I am to the campaign staff that we had. This is just an amazing team, I got to tell you. Excuse me, these guys spent months on end working 18-hour days. I can't tell you, I don't even know how many nights they spent sleeping on a couch and getting up in the morning again after basically a nap and going at it again. The determination was amazing. The perseverance, the spirit of these guys was tremendous. They're mostly young. They're all incredibly smart. They just worked their hearts out. Everybody played a crucial role. The folks in the communication shop, the fundraising guys, the political organization, the grassroots organizers, and people who managed the back office, the scheduler and the travel crew. Everybody was absolutely superb. I don't think it's speaking out of school for me to brag about these guys by telling you that several sitting senators who've been watching a lot of races very closely have observed that these guys have been running the best Senate campaign in the United States of America. And I am grateful for that.
One of those envelopes, Senator-elect Toomey opened, was enclosed in it a Chamber of Commerce check for $1.7 million. It was not all $3 at a time. Just to mention that.
The note was very sweet and heartwarming, though.
Yeah, here's $1.7 million from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on this. He didn't get it, obviously. It went to advertising during it. Joe Sestak, the Democratic nominee, the Republican, the representative, is speaking. As we understand it, his concession speech in progress. Let's join that in a close-fought race in Pennsylvania. Here is Joe Sestak.
Thank them enough, and the rest of, and my mom, and you know, my pop's up there and his hand's on that tiller. So thank you very much to my family. And my brother. And then I wanted to mention my congressional district, and those I worked for a number of years. Republican, Democrat, Independent. I never had a better boss than them. I love being their public servants. 700,000 strong. And it was, as I always said, if you can't be in the Navy, I had the next best job. It was just wonderful. And then let me mention next to last, Pennsylvanians. You know, if someone said to me, start it all over again, and you know how the ending was going to be, start that year and a half again, I'd do it even knowing the ending, in a heartbeat, in a heartbeat. I can't tell you what I learned. I just can't even begin to tell you what I learned. Pennsylvanians, there's something. They care. They desire to believe again. And they love America. Yes, and that memory, the last year and a half, is going to find a home inside of me in the grandest sepulcher of all, the heart of a Pennsylvanian. I love it. And then, you know, it was really tough for me going around with my wife.
And Mommy.
And you. I'll tell you, things are changing tomorrow for me.
Cleaning out the den.
Cleaning out the den. You know, I used to go, I said it was really hard for me as I went around with my wife, because after every event, someone would say, Joe, if she was running, you could win. You know, I proposed to her, and 8 years later, she said yes. Persistence, hard work on my part, don't you think? I love her. And now...
Well, she did say yes for 48 years, but then you didn't want her.
And now, the best part. It is to our... This is why I got in, Alex. And now the best part. If you don't mind. That's right. It is now Alex time. Thank you, everybody.
The conclusion of the Pennsylvania Senate race going to the Republican Pat Toomey over Joe Sestak. And apart from that touching scene, explain Pennsylvania politics tonight.
Well, that was Mr. Smith doesn't get to go to Washington this time. Great family scene there. Both candidates seem normal. Maybe because I'm from Pennsylvania, they seem like normal people, both of them. And Toomey will be all right. I mean, he's a very conservative guy. He did, as you say, got a lot of money from big corporations. He's a club for growth. They're not just a populist at all. But I got to hand it. I mean, Sestak is not a popular guy with the organization people, not a popular guy with the establishment people. He had a battle with Arlen Specter. He pulled an upset there, winning most of the counties. It's a gutsy thing, and people have to run. I mean, this country's run by the good people that run it, and the bad people are there too. And but you got to run. And he ran, and he did all he could do.
It will be.
And I am very impressed by Joe Sestak's guts, because he didn't have anybody asking him to run, and he ran, and he did a really good campaign in a brutal year. And everybody knows, and he'll know it as long as he lives, that he would have won in a good year for the Democrats. And Toomey won, and it's a bad year for the Democrats. It's like 1994 when Santorum came in. It's one of those years where Pennsylvania, which is a generally blue state, no more conservative than a purple state, went red this time. It's an odd year. Toomey ran the right year to run, but to his credit, Toomey's tried before. He lost a heartbreaker to Arlen Specter last time. He came back and did what he had to do to win this race, and looked to me like a clean race, and he won it.
And you couldn't ask for a better Democratic candidate. If you were designing a Democratic candidate, you'd say, okay, how about military veteran? Well,
30-year admiral.
Well, would you go for admiral? Would you go for a 30? No, that's impossible. That's going too far. You know, I mean, the guy was everything you could ask for.
There was one other potential candidate that might have been better, but you never know.
Ask us to bet on that.
Could I mention one other race very quickly in South Carolina? Tim Scott, African-American Republican, was elected to Congress. I think it's the first black Republican to be elected to Congress from a Deep South state, probably since Reconstruction.
I was going to say.
The past shall be, everything old shall be new again.
Right.
My great-grandfather was a great wheeler dealer in Republican Party politics in South Carolina, because that used to be the party, after Lincoln and everything, and it kind of lost its way in terms of African Americans at some point. But
you mean the Southern strategy didn't include your family?
Right. No, they didn't. We weren't on the mailing list.
We should also have the Indian American governor in South Carolina as well on the Republican side.
Exactly.
All right. Now, what still has to be
lose, by the way.
But what we still have to address is the uncounted votes in the 4 remaining senatorial races that are so key to firm control of the Senate. Chuck Todd has been covering tonight's elections by the numbers, and will literally map that out for us. Chuck?
I will do just that. Let's go to the Senate, and we've got these, as you know, these uncalled races. Colorado and Michael Bennet show you this vote split right here. Michael Bennet, a very narrow lead at this point. You're looking at about 8,000 votes. I'll show you the counties in a minute that are missing, but they're both Denver suburbs. That could portend well for Mr. Bennet over Mr. Buck in this case. The other incredibly close race here is the Florida governor, which also we haven't been able to count. And it could be we have to wait till all the vote is counted to get it in. As you see, it's getting narrower and narrower here. 100,000 vote difference. But let me show you where these votes are missing. First, I'm going to pull up here our county maps so you can see it. This is Florida, and I can tell you this: what is missing is in some big Democratic areas in South Florida. Palm Beach County and Dade County both have about half the vote not counted, and the sink votes, the Democrats believe they're going to close that gap. The question is, can they close all 100,000 of that gap? That's not clear. Now, let me take you to Colorado Senate, because obviously I told you about this. Well, what is missing out of there are suburban counties, Arapahoe and Jefferson. They're right over here. I'm going to draw it over here. Those are what's the big counties that are missing there, and these are the suburbs. And the question is, tonight in House races, Republicans did pretty well in the suburbs. In these Senate races, though, we've seen that Democrats have held strong in these suburbs. What's it going to be for Bennett and Buck in this case? Buck has done well. Colorado's in the Denver area, Democrats do very well. Everywhere else is where Republicans do well. The question is, how far into the suburbs can Republicans creep, and how far out of the suburbs can Democrats creep in order to win races in Colorado, guys?
Excellent. Thank you, Chuck.
Yes, sir.
Really insightful stuff. All right, we're going to take a quick break and then check back in on Nevada as our midterm 2010 coverage continues from MSNBC. And now 70% of the vote in the rural counties are beginning to report, and Harry Reid is maintaining still a 6 percentage point lead over Sharon Angle, the Tea Party Republican, challenging him, the Senate Democratic leader. It's not comfortable. It's too early to call. It's 6% with only 30% left to come in. That would have to be an awful lot on the 30% to come in to change that. Too early to call also in Washington. Patty Murray clinging to a 2-point lead with 46% yet to be counted in the state of Washington. And at the Colorado Senate, where if you were with us before the break, you heard Chuck Todd explaining what has not been counted and why the Ken Buck trailing Michael Bennett by 10,000 votes may not be as big as it will be. The suburban counties, a lot of suburban counties still to be counted in Colorado. So those are the three. In Alaska, of course, we don't know yet anything, have nothing at this point. The 48 Democrats firm plus the 2 independents, Sanders and Lieberman, gives the Democrats nominal control, maintenance of the House, and one more victory in one of those 4 outstanding races, like in Nevada, where NBC News is now projecting Harry Reid will hold on to his Senate seat and defeat Sharon Angle, the perhaps embodiment of the Tea Party. That's a governor's race also in Brian Sandoval, the Republican. We have that. The Harry Reid data is correct. We just don't have the here it comes. All right. It's not official till you see the computerized picture. And there he is, smiling officially. The incumbent Harry Reid, after one of the great, epic, and crazy senatorial races of our time, staying put with 30% yet to go. They're obviously in the last 10% that reported as we began to see those rural counties coming in. There was no real indication that Sharon Angle was going to be making up that difference to any great degree, although it may wind up much closer. And there's your big number, 49 pure Democrats plus Bernie Sanders, independent, the firm caucuser with the Dems, and Joe Lieberman, makes 51, and still the remaining ones, 3 of them to be decided in Colorado, in Alaska, and in Washington State. So first out to Las Vegas and Harry Reid headquarters and Ed Schultz, and there you have it, huh, Ed?
Well, Keith, this place has absolutely erupted when you called it. This has been a tough night for the Democrats, but we are pretty much on an island of happiness here. It is amazing the effort that was put forth to defeat Harry Reid, but the old boxer, the old fighter, on a night when the Democrats seem to have not a whole lot of fight across the country, he had one last big political swing, and Harry Reid is going to go back to the United States Senate as the Senate Majority Leader. He is very well liked by his colleagues. He has immense respect. As I said earlier tonight, I had 3 phone calls from senators who thought that this really was going to be a pivotal race for them to keep their cohesiveness, and there might have been some infighting that had broken out had Harry not win this. I was going to tell you just before you called it that it was really going to take a catastrophic defeat, a catastrophic collapse in the rural area for Sharon Angle to make up what Harry had gained. We were just told that all of the early votes, half points, defeated Sharon Angle in her own county her own hometown of Reno.
Wow.
70% of the votes come out of Clark County, and they are believing that this was obviously the big county that delivered for Harry Reid. Big win for the Democrats, and he is the knight in shining armor for the Democrats tonight.
And I guess there's some irony to this, of course, Ed, because I suppose a year ago, if you had looked at the Senate and the House and said which of these two leaders, Speaker Pelosi or Majority Leader Reid, would retain that, which would be the firmest guarantee into the midterms of 2010, you probably would have gone with the Speaker of the House. And now Harry Reid, in a quiet kind of not ebullient, not a gigantic personality, style both of management of his position and his own Senate seat, coming out prevailing, surviving in what otherwise has been a mixed night at best of the Democrats. This is, against any Republican candidate, this would be a pretty good thumping on the part of Harry Reid.
Yeah, and the irony of it is that the Senate has just gone through a record number of filibusters, not able to get a whole lot done because of the obstruction. And over on the House, where Nancy Pelosi is not going to be the Speaker, they've passed somewhat 240 bills. I mean, if you're looking for legislative accomplishments, Nancy Pelosi delivered the mail. On the other hand, if you're looking for legislative accomplishments for a Harry Reid Majority Leader Senate run by Harry Reid, it's health care, it's the Ledbetter bill, the equal pay for women. It's the stimulus package, which was really the tire around their neck here in Nevada because of 15% unemployment in Las Vegas. I mean, that is a huge number. The Democratic base delivered for Harry Reid. The workers delivered for Harry Reid. I think we're going to be able to look back at the controversial comment that Sharon Angle made about Latinos looking like Asians in that classroom, and how she was so stubborn in dealing with the media. I will tell you this, the sense I get on the ground, if you had said 2 days ago in Las Vegas that Harry Reid was going to win, you'd have almost been laughed out of town. This is a remarkable ground game paying off. This is a remarkable effort by the Reid people to never give up. They just fought like hell to get the vote out, and they are victorious tonight. It is really an amazing story. A state where unemployment is high, a state that relies on 3 industries: tourism, which is down, mining, which is getting better, and of course, agriculture, which is very small in this state. Keith?
Ed, I have to interrupt you because we have another call to make, and it's for Governor of California, and everything old is new again in the state of California. The polling is in, and our projection is that Jerry Brown will return to the State House in Sacramento in a gain for the Democrats from Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know if he'd classify himself as a Republican right now after some of his speeches, but with 28% of the vote in, the hard numbers over Meg Whitman, 4%. Hard to say where this one has been decided. There were so many different elements in this, but obviously a campaign in which the Republican comes out and waxes nostalgic about the day she moved in and how wonderful California was when she moved in there 30 years ago, when the man she's running against was governor the first time. That's pretty unanswerable, at least from an advertising point of view. Quite an outcome there. Somebody who moved into California 5 years after Meg Whitman, I know what she was talking about.
$100 a vote.
Yes.
More than $100 a vote there.
But she also created a lot of jobs. I mean, you spend that many millions of dollars. Some campaign consultants are much better off than they were before this campaign.
No Democrat had more money spent against him than Jerry Brown, and it never hurt him.
And it proves that the buy it now button doesn't always work on eBay. I just wanted to...
On the Harry Reid win, can I just say that the Harry Reid surviving is such a disastrous loss for the Republican Party, it is almost hard to overstate. With the worst unemployment in the country, with Harry Reid's numbers as bad as you can possibly get and still be standing as a politician, for the Republican Party to have collapsed against him, for him to have pulled this off, is stunning. I mean, Karl Rove came in and tried to run the Get Out the Vote effort for Sharon Angle in Nevada because the Republican Party party there. Who's the head of it? Jim Gibbons lost the primary for governor, and John Ensign, better not spoken of in Family Hour. So we've got a collapse of the Republican Party. They couldn't get it together. They tried to carry it nationally. This was going to be their marquee race for tonight. This was going to be the way they rubbed Democrats' noses in it, and Sharon Angle just got killed. She ran the most racist ads that I've seen in 10 years in a major party race in this country, and she got killed.
They ran the wrong candidate.
Right.
I mean, they should have run.
Did they run her hard?
Sue Lawton. I mean,
Sue Lawton would have been tough.
She would have been a tougher candidate.
Might have been better.
This is why the Reid campaign celebrated when Sharon Angle got the nomination. They knew this is the only way they could win. You know, in a regular year, he would have beaten her by much more. I mean, this is close for someone as flaky as Sharon Angle running against the majority
This is who
leader.
the Republican Party put up, and they got creamed.
We have a number on the race in Nevada from our friends at Voto Latino. The 90 percentile vote total in the Latino vote in Nevada for Harry Reid. And to address that and several other topics, we're joined by Governor Bill Richardson of New Mexico, who's been standing by patiently as these last couple of results have rolled out. I'm sure to your great delight that you've been able to sit there and watch this happen, of course.
Well, yes, and I was in Reno about a week ago with the Latino community. I could sense the intensity. And while Republicans are going to crow about electing maybe 2 elected statewide officials around the country, the Latino vote, I believe, at least in the West, has stayed with the Democrats. Jerry Brown in California, Barbara Boxer, very strong Latino votes. Harry Reid, you mentioned, this is a state with a growing Hispanic population, not just in Las Vegas and in the urban areas, but in the rural areas as well, the Latino vote. In Colorado, I was out there in Pueblo in southern Colorado. 30% of that state is Hispanic. It looks like it's going very strongly for Bennett. A lot of those Latinos are in the Denver suburbs. So I believe despite the crowing of Republicans of electing, unfortunately in my state, a Republican governor, a Latina woman, in Nevada against Harry Reid's son, interestingly, a Hispanic attorney general, and in Rubio in Florida, the gains of Democrats with Hispanic voters is going to stay, I believe, nationally at about 65%, which is a nice cushion for Democrats in the future, and I think augurs well for President Obama's reelection in a couple of years.
Is there any way, Governor, to assess how and how many different levels some of those comments that Sharon Angle made, which she must have thought were somehow working to her advantage or were overtures in front of the groups of Hispanic youths in Nevada, how many different ways that was managing to step on a rake that would then hit her in the forehead?
Well, when I was in Reno, I picked up a lot of that, the resentment, that they were put in a category that they felt was unfortunate. The same in California with the problem that Meg Whitman had with her maid, with that woman who unfortunately was maligned. And I believe that provoked a real reaction among Hispanic voters. And so the tendencies of Republicans to be anti-immigrant, against immigration reform, I believe it's going to stay very costly for them. Although, look, they did elect 3 Hispanics statewide, and they're none from the Democratic Party. I'm gone in January. I'm disappearing. So that is a symbolic victory for them. But still, the numbers of Latinos staying with the Democratic Party is good. But now I think President Obama and the Democrats have to produce sometime next year comprehensive immigration reform in a bipartisan way. Call it triangulation. I know you guys don't like that word, but for a Hispanic, that is an essential policy that we need to have, along with improved education and health care. My last point on Hispanic voters, they don't just care about immigration. They care about jobs. They care about the American dream. They care about health care. They care about housing. So it's not one issue that dominates the Hispanic voter.
You know, Governor, I'm looking at our exit poll numbers in terms of ethnicity and age, and it is striking. Her appeal clearly at the end was toward the Anglo voter, the white voter, if you will, with that very screeching ad against made all Hispanic immigrants look like criminals coming across the border, you know. But look at the number here. 58% among white men went for Angle. 51% of white women. Then you go Hispanics about 2 to 1 for Harry Reid. And then you go age-wise. Now, this is fascinating, too. Everybody above middle age, older than middle age, voted for her, and all the younger people of all groups apparently voted for him. That's a fascinating look at what looks to be the future of that state. It seems like the future is Democratic. Nevada.
Well, yes, and I think that's a national issue too, Chris, because if President Obama can keep that coalition that he had of young, Hispanic, African American, independent voters, it augurs well for his reelection. And what Republicans are going to have to do now that they have the House is they're going to have to co-govern. They can't just be the party of no. They've got to have their alternative budgets. They're going to have to put something through on taxes, on Afghanistan. You know, I noticed your interview, Keith, with Eric Ketter. He didn't answer anything, and they can't keep doing that. If they keep doing that, they're going to go down, and we'll be back 2 years from now with another Republican debacle as happened 2 years ago.
Governor Bill Richardson of New Mexico, great thanks. And we appreciate your perspective on all of this, and it's always a pleasure, so thank you much. We're going to take a break. We'll now be anticipating a speech shortly from Senator Harry Reid, maintaining his office, and we'll be updating you on Colorado and the Washington Senate races as the Democrats have put 50 Senate seats in their pocket, plus the 2 independents. Stand by for more of MSNBC's midterm coverage.
MSNBC, the place for politics, welcomes our global audience to coverage of the midterm elections 2010.
Invariably, after anyone wins anything, especially on a midterms night, the emailed statements fly back and forth, and most of them are not worth the price of the paper that you don't print them out on. However, there is one to read to you tonight from Massachusetts Senator John Kerry, who released the statement following Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid's victory in Nevada. The quote, "Politico was wrong, Huffington Post was wrong, hell, all the pundits were wrong. Harry Reid isn't just Dracula, he isn't just Lazarus, he's our leader, and our whole caucus is thrilled that he's unbreakable and unbeatable."
Yeah, Dracula. You always want to be compared to Dracula in politics. You know, John Ralston was right about this. The Nevada reporter, John Ralston, he was on my show last night. He said Harry Reid was going to win. He wrote a column saying Harry Reid was going to win. But he said Reid was going to win because of the none of the above column on the ballot, which you get to vote for. Right. He did not expect Harry Reid to get what he's headed for, which is 51% of the vote, a clean win. He expected Harry Reid to win only because of that.
His favorability.
Yeah. Let's get. Let's get.
We got more votes than people like him.
Yeah.
2 quick facts in here. The Palin scoreboard quickly: 14, 12, and 3 of those endorsed by Sarah Palin, leading us to Howard Fineman at the Listing Post and the question of how does the former governor and her partner in crime, Jim DeMint, how do they feel tonight with these results, Howard?
Well, I'm sure they are going to try to claim credit for all the Republicans' success tonight. Let's not lose sight of the fact that the Republicans winning what looks to be 65 seats, you know, the Democrats losing 65 seats in the House is historic. But blackberrying back and forth now from over here in the Listing Post to those dreaded Republican insiders, they can't stand either Sarah Palin or Jim DeMint, and even though they wanted to win control of the Senate, they're sort of conflicted because they're happy to see Sarah Palin, by extension, lose 2 Mama Grizzlies here, both Christine O'Donnell in Delaware and Sharon Engel in Nevada. And, you know, I said, well, what about Sarah Palin? They told me, what about Jim DeMint? Because they're worried about DeMint because DeMint is the inside partner for Palin in the Senate.
Can I go back to John Kerry's statement for a moment? There's something important in it, which is a warning shot by Kerry to anyone who is thinking that maybe Harry Reid should be moved out of the majority
that's out
leadership.
The window. That's not
maybe a senator from New York who might be thinking thinking that,
No,
or elsewhere.
I was
don't
told by
think about it.
All right, we have to close the hour. I just would advise that the spelling of Mama Grizzly is now G-R-I-S-L-Y and not the one with the 2 Z's. Assent? Agreed?
No. Meaning?
Grizzly?
Meaning?
I want to put it.
We're sending that to committee for further study.
Our coverage of the midterms, we still have the Washington Senate, Colorado Senate. We'll continue. I'll be here by myself for the last hour, apparently. Here we go. We'll be back. 1 a.m. Eastern Time. That's the last of the poll closings. It's dark there in Alaska. Alaska has closed. It's fallen off the map, so to speak. Let's move on to what we know. We have no numbers from Alaska. Colorado is too close to call, with nearly 3/4 of the vote in, and Ken Buck having assumed the 36,000 vote margin over the incumbent, Senator Bennett. Washington too early to call. It is now at 54% and still a 2% Murray margin over Rossi. The pickup list for the Republicans in the Senate. Hardly a disastrous night for the Democrats. As you see, the majority leader, Mr. Reid, has been returned, along with 49 purely identified Democrats. I said 50 before, my mistake, counting essentially the independent Mr. Sanders of Vermont, who would get very angry with me for saying this, but he would be the 50th, if you will. And Mr. Lieberman is 51. There's still the 3 outstanding there to go. In the House, big night for the Republicans. There's no question about it. There was very little question going in. The projection with the margin of error, a total of 12, plus or minus 6, a 55-seat Republican majority. How much of that is going to be Tea Party? How much of that is pure Republican? How much of that is going to lead to infighting? We'll know later on. But that's what it looks like as hour 8 of our coverage continues here. A big swing, obviously, in the House. But the interesting thing about this is, I suppose, that the conservatives, Republicans, Tea Partiers, and others on the right wing will be tap dancing throughout the evening and throughout the week. Enjoy. Democrats who came into this with their apprehensions hanging out probably have less reason to be apprehensive than they did 8 hours ago. I think this is one of those rare things where much of what happened was expected to happen and did occur, and yet the side that was going to get its head handed to it really didn't get its head handed to it. It got, obviously, the loss of the House can't be understated, but what did not happen in many of those individual races, what tactics did not work, what ethnic targeting did not work, what happened in Nevada was extraordinary, and there were many highlights for the Democrats throughout the night.
And what will not work in a presidential campaign, which is a Tea Party candidate or a Tea Party-backed candidate like a Sarah Palin. That is a hopeless prospect for Republicans. They should know that by now after tonight. With the economic numbers being what they are in the exit polls, the economic attitudes of these voters tonight were much, much more negative than the economic attitudes of voters in 1994. The Democrats should have been hurt much worse than they were. It is within the realm of losing seats. This is a successful hanging on night for Democrats.
Well, except in the House. I mean, the loss in the House is quite
that loss
substantial.
Could have been much bigger.
No, it could have been much bigger. I think it's going to take a few days to understand why the House, as opposed to these other races. Why not the Senate? Why not
the governorships?
The governorships. Deval Patrick was fine, and it turned out in Massachusetts people thought he might be in trouble if there were a big wave. So the wave, it didn't deform all terrain equally, you know?
Can I talk about the economic structure of the country? Where the Democrats have done well. Barbara Boxer has a very good relationship with the .com people on the Silicon Valley. She's done a lot for them in legislation. They like her. They're hip to her. She's hip to them. Route 128 in Massachusetts, Deval Patrick with the more educated people up there, very educated population. Massachusetts is great. New York's great. The coasts are great. The left coast, the east coast are great. Where I see real trouble for the Democratic Party tonight is what I've been calling now for days from now, the Scranton to Oshkosh problem, all the way from Pennsylvania to Wisconsin. The industrial heartland, the Rust Belt, they love that phrase. Right across, senators and governors all lost. Friends of mine, guys in Congress, guys like Murphy and Carney and Kanjorski, they've all lost. This is a huge problem. If you use the guys that go to the NFL games with the big jobbers on, that vote for the Bears and root for everybody, root for Cleveland Browns, those regular guys from Scranton and all the way across, they're turning back to the other party, to the Republican Party. They are Reagan Democrats, and they're angry about the fact of this. 65-year-old, 45-year-old, 55-year-old guys are losing their jobs. They're losing their jobs. They're losing their economic security and their pride. This is real with them. And they're not going to go out and get some other job tomorrow. They're not going to get retrained and all this loosey-goosey talk. That's the problem with that. And that's why I push infrastructure. That's why I'm pushing steel jobs and building things again. Because these guys have got to get one last break in life so they can work out their careers. And they're not getting to do it. And they are really upset. I don't think anger is the right word. They're just upset. They'd be happier working.
Chris, do you think
problem.
Any of them think that there is a single thing the American government can do to create a job in the American steel industry? That those steel mills are going to come back online?
I'll tell you, when I was growing, I know it's retro thinking. If you smile and laugh at me for being yesterday, I am yesterday. When I was growing up in Northeast Philadelphia, they were building trains and subways for South Korea and Tokyo. We used to build trains. Boeing and Verto used to build airplanes. Bud plants used to build subways. All those jobs in the row houses where all the Irish and Polish guys lived in North Philadelphia, they all had jobs you could take the subway to. All the black guys that live in those neighborhoods today don't have jobs you can go to. They don't exist. There's no job 2 subway stops away anymore. Yeah. It doesn't exist. I was thinking the other day, what's the difference in my old neighborhood as it's changed to becoming African American? What's the difference? Jobs. Industrial guys' jobs you can get out of high school. They don't exist anymore.
But it's not just
it's a real problem.
You don't get to vote on whether or not you get to go in the time machine, though. You get to go vote in Pennsylvania on whether you want Joe Sestak or whether you want Pat Toomey.
Isn't that a function of policy?
No.
Free trade policy?
Listen,
a lot of
you
it
picked
is.
Pat Toomey, and so those guys who voted for Pat Toomey right now.
He's against the steel industry. He says that.
In 2012, are those guys who voted for Pat Toomey because they're upset with how the economy is right now, are they going to say, boy,
they're going to get free trade.
I got this guy who did 6 years in Congress, then went off to Wall Street and the Club for Growth, which is about getting corporate interests enforced in terms of
Republican voting out of desperation.
So they will have plighted their troth with Pat Toomey.
Right.
So it doesn't mean in 2012 they're going to be delighted with their
he's not going to do anything except cut taxes.
But
that's all he's going to do.
Cut taxes for corporations.
In this belt out to Oshkosh that you have described.
It's a reality.
But did we not see it roll outwards for the Democrats in 06 and 08 and pull back like the tide this time?
I think they managed to win, but a lot of those, bluntly spoken, a lot of those people in Western Pennsylvania did not vote for Barack, I don't think. It wasn't that good a victory. It was an okay victory. But I tell you, it's gone now. All those governorships, by the way, the Ohio governorship was really important to Barack Obama's reelection project. The whole plan was based on, we'll see how Florida goes. If they lose Florida tonight, if Alex Sink, who's a pretty good candidate, gets blown away by a bad candidate, Rick Scott, who is a bad candidate, who took the fifth 75 times, that's a problem. 75 times. Okay, I refuse to testify on the grounds that may tend to incriminate me. If you hear that, why don't they have that tape? I mean, I tell you, that's a problem for that guy. He could win.
You don't know if he's going to actually swear the oath of
well, you know, like in the mob movies, they always do it that way. But I mean, I don't know if it's on record. But I tell you, they need. Okay, do I have to make this case louder? I won't. I will get louder.
No.
The industrial center of the country must vote Democrat because they've lost the South. They got the coast. It's not enough.
When those people vote Republican, though, they are voting for a specific thing. They're not just voting anti-Democrat.
They might do it again next time.
And whether or not these Republican candidates, now politicians, can reward those voters remains to be seen. And when you've got guys like
by the way, the economy
is not going to be with the steel industry.
I know. Okay, let me tell you. The unemployment rate's about 9.5% right now. If it's up that high again in 2 years, look out, because I don't think what else will change. If it's still up there, Obama loses.
And if it's
it isn't
up there,
complicated.
Those guys are going to
Does anybody at this table think Obama gets reelected at 9.5% employment?
I think Obama can beat any current possible Republican candidate. The Republican bench has no one. This is like 96. This is like 96. They had Bob Dole. That meant they were going to lose.
Okay, but Lawrence, you know,
didn't have to know anything else.
Opportunity creates the great. They're not going to run a bomb if it's 9.5%.
They don't have anybody.
What if it's John Thune?
He will lose.
I don't know. How about Huntsman?
These people are nothing.
No,
these people are
Huntsman will have been out of the country for several years, which might be a good thing to be running.
Every once in a while it happens. Look, in '88, the best the Democrats could do was Michael Dukakis. That meant they were going to lose. You could go to sleep. to watch the campaign, they were going to lose. Same thing in '96. The best they had was Bob Dole. It's not like they left a better candidate at home. Bob Dole was the best they had. They were going to lose. You didn't have to watch the campaign. They do not have a competitor to Barack Obama. They don't have
Actually, they have Romney. And I actually think Romney, I've always thought Romney would be a tough, I mean, they may not nominate him, but I've always thought he would be a tough candidate because he will say anything, he will be anything, whatever.
He can't erase.
Right.
If in 2012, the healthcare
he's got this little problem that he wrote the healthcare plan.
In whatever form and stage it still is.
Not to mention the fact that everybody who has any power in the Republican Party hates Mitt Romney's guts. He doesn't have a friend in the world, and that's including dogs.
Can I ask a question?
That if you put him up there against Obama and unemployment is 9.6%, I think that's the toughest battle.
There's two factions in the Republican Party.
If the Republicans would do it.
There's two factions in the Republican. There's the Tea Party people led by Sarah Palin. If she runs, she's their nominee.
And it's all over. It is all over. You don't have to count the votes. It's all over.
When the White Boys Club meets, I should say Fat Boys Club meets now with what's his name, Haley Barbour and Chris Christie and all those guys to get together. They're going to pick somebody. Who are they going to pick?
It doesn't matter. There is no White Boys Club. They run primaries, Chris. They don't close the door. They run primaries. It's an open process.
In 2000,
this doesn't exist, this mythological club.
No, but they will come up with George W. They will back somebody.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They run primaries. Anyone can run. Anyone with money.
They've got to come up with a candidate against Sarah.
Well, how about the fact that whoever that candidate is going to have a debate with Sarah Palin?
He might win.
Well, one would think that this is the first time she will have exposed her flanks to that.
Obama's in a better position than Bill Clinton was 2 years into his presidency.
Well, I will say that with the economy that we've got right now, and with the Republicans in the Senate pledging that their only goal as the Republicans in the Senate now is to ensure that Barack Obama is a one-term president. If, in fact, the 2012 race starts, I guess today, since it's after midnight,
10 minutes from
starts 10 minutes from now, then we are assured that absolutely nothing will happen in Washington. Right. I think because the Republicans know they don't have a candidate, there is a possibility that campaign will not start for 4 or 5 months. And if that's the case, it's possible that something could pass in Washington over the next 4 or 5 months. I don't think it's impossible, but as soon as that campaign starts, all bets are off in terms of legislation.
What happens? Something like what can pass?
Well, if you listen to the White House, they believe they can get something done on infrastructure. They believe they can. They believe they can get something done on small business lending. They believe they can get something done on that stuff. Can they?
Okay. What happens if the economy improves based on all those small little signs of the last couple of weeks and the slight outperformances of expectations, to say nothing of the record corporate profits? At some point, corporations are going to see the opportunity to make more money by hiring more people. What happens now? I mean, obviously, both parties will claim credit for that because one has the House and one has the Senate. But is then the tipping point who has the White House? Do the Democrats win that message war if we're responsible by 2 to 1?
No, that's good for the president. Yeah, I mean, if you're president and the economy gets better, that's good for you. Better for you than for anybody else.
He would perhaps gain some credit that he had not actually earned in terms of productivity, just as he gained great blame that he did not deserve.
I think the president doesn't get credit for the economy improving. If that were true, Barack Obama and the Democrats would be having a great night right now because it's a lot better than it was when he took over. The Democrats, the president, no matter who it is, gets credit when the economy is good. So it has to improve a hell of a lot for him to reap any gains for that.
Hey, guess what just came in? The first Alaska numbers, and you asked for it. Write-in votes are ahead. 39-34, McAdams 25, that second and third place. Obviously, quarter of the vote already counted, and this intricate, labyrinthine, medieval process in Alaska, which you do not open the write-in votes to see who they are unless they could create an outcome, correct? That's the way it is?
They might create
well, all right, but again, if we were having trouble with the faxes in Nevada, we would presume some of this is coming via the Iditarod route from the
Before we go north to Alaska, I want to go back. You had a very good point there. Here's the great unexpected probability. I think it's going to happen. If the markets absorb the knowledge that nothing's going to get done because the Republicans now control the House except tax cuts. I talked to my financial advisor yesterday, Dan Saunders from the University of Scranton, having mentioned Scranton before. And he says what you want is certitude in the market. This is not an ideology. They just want to know which way it's going to go. They want to know roughly what they can predict on in terms of making business investments. If it's now clear we've got a Republican tax writing part of the Congress, So they're going to control basically, there's not going to be an increase in tax. They're not going to do new regulation. They got control of that. Does this mean that maybe the market will respond, that billions of dollars or trillions of dollars they're sitting on,
piles of money,
and that they just say, well, here's our chance to blow some cash, hire some people? Could it be that Barack Obama will be the winner of the House victory for the Republicans?
Because Republicans being in control in Congress always means good things for business and predictability.
Not good, just nothing. It means nothing, and it means predictability.
If they want stasis, they can bank on that. If they want progress,
but you have in fact heard a lot of businessmen say exactly that. So ironically, this tonight might redound to the Democrats' benefit in 2012.
Test it down tomorrow night.
I mean predictability plus a little consumer demand.
We have consumer demand for commercials. That's all I know at this point. We're getting Alaska numbers. We have Nevada wrapped up. We still have to figure out the Washington Senate, the Colorado Senate. So stand by. We're going to continue to follow that here on MSNBC. Just over 1/4 of the votes counted already in Alaska, where the polls only closed 18 minutes ago. And yes, that's what it says. Write-in votes, which is Lisa Murkowski and anybody else who registered in time. 39%. Joe Miller hanging 5 points back. And the Democrat Scott McAdams in a relatively close third position. The last polling in Alaska, of course, had Mr. Miller having sunk to third place after a rough last couple of weeks of that campaign, including a memorable walk and kind of talk, but not make a great deal of sense with my colleague Rachel Maddow, which was a special day.
That was the most aerobic interview that I've done this year.
And clearly for him, too, because he had to, like, talk to people and such. We're waiting Harry Reid, his victory speech in Nevada. Something a lot of people didn't think they were going to see. The pictures you saw, all they got right now is a big shot of me, which really isn't what they want in Nevada. But Ed Schultz continues to be perfectly positioned as history is written in Nevada, and joins us once again. The idea that this has happened is beginning to settle in that room?
It really is, Keith. I just spoke with the Secretary of State a few moments ago, and I asked him, give me some numbers. What do you have? We're very close in Nevada to 400,000 early votes out of 1.1 million. He says that is extremely high. I said, what are you hearing tonight from the Republicans? He said, a lot of complaints. I said, Sharon Angle has never given a concession speech. What do you think will happen? Do you think they'll look for a recount? He said, well, we use electronic machines, so that's not going to be able to be recounted. All the paper ballots can be counted. But the process is, after the canvassing on November 22nd, if the Republicans go down that road, or the Tea Partiers, they have to have 5% of the precincts in all of the 17 counties in Nevada counted, and they have to pay for it. It's highly unlikely, but this is still pretty close. And just to play out that scenario, that's where it is. In 5 minutes, we are told that Harry Reid is going to speak. If I could get back to some of the things that Chris was saying about manufacturing and creating jobs and building stuff in this country. To be fair about it, as much of an advocate as I am for labor and a believer in organized labor and working in this country, it's been a rough night at the office. You know, they didn't deliver in Pennsylvania for Joe Sestak. They didn't deliver for the gubernatorial chair in Ohio. Russ Feingold is gone. Barbara Boxer is back. Harry Reid is here. But this was not the sweeping victory that labor had in 2006 and in 2008 for Barack Obama. And so this is, I think, an opportunity for the Republicans. I would probably go with the most anti-labor guy I could find if I were on the Republican side. And that would take you right across the river from where you're broadcasting tonight, Mr. Christie. This guy is an anti-labor guy. He's a budget cutter. He'll fall right in line with, I think, what Boehner is talking about and Cantor earlier tonight. And I also think that Michelle Bachmann, who, by the way, earlier tonight, her victory party wasn't even in her district. It was over in the 3rd district. So she talks about creating jobs. Maybe she ought to create jobs in the service industry in her own district and have her victory party in the 6th district. It was held over in the 3rd district. So, and I think Bachmann going out raising $11 million, she's a national player. She has never seen a TV camera she didn't like. She's very accessible to the folks across the street. And I think Christie, I think Bachmann, they're media stars. They can raise a lot of money. They're anti-labor. I think they're going to be players in 2012. Michelle Bachmann, this is a big win for her. She doesn't spend a lot of time in Minnesota. She's gone around the country. She stumped probably more than anybody else in the House for the Republicans. I mean, she was everywhere. Terrell Clark put up a great fight. She was outgunned by $7 million, but she still lost by 12% of the vote. So I think Christie, I think Bachmann, they're still fresh copy for the Republicans. And going back to John Boehner earlier tonight, Boehner got emotional, which I think is going to connect with a lot of people. When you want something so bad and you achieve it, you get overcome with emotion. He showed that he's got a pulse. But again, Boehner is going to have to come back, and he is going to have to work with the president to create jobs. And that does not stand consistent with some of the comments that Boehner has made just in recent interviews. This is no time to compromise. We got to stick to our principles. Just what he said earlier to Tea Partiers. You know, I will not abandon you, or something of that nature. So will the real John Boehner please stand up? Who are you going to genuflect to, Mr. Boehner? The Tea Partiers? The hard-right conservatives? Or are you actually going to go into the Oval Office and say to the President of the United States, no more obstruction, I want to create jobs with you? They're about power. I don't trust them. They're about power. They want Barack Obama to be a one-term president, and I do believe that the Republican leader in the Senate said just that.
Ed Schultz in Las Vegas. We'll be going back to Senator Reid's headquarters in just a moment, but I wanted to emphasize one thing, which was that John Boehner, by his own admission, will cry at a supermarket opening. That was not an isolated event earlier this evening, he brought up...
I do think that was a genuine moment.
Yes,
I think,
but I'm just saying that
when someone
the other ones
assumes
were
the speakership,
genuine too.
They feel the weight of that office instantaneously.
Well,
this is a guy who grew up one of 12 children, the first in his family to go to college.
Republican.
I mean, I don't agree with him on a single policy objective he wants, but I think I saw what was happening to him, which was that realization he is going to be the Speaker of the House. He's going to have that responsibility, that gavel, and that incredible weight.
I think that there's distance between you guys that maybe I can bridge here, though, which is that John Boehner does cry a lot, and so it is part of, I think, what makes him an appealing political figure to some people. But he's famous for having wept openly and almost like ferociously on the floor of the House while begging Republicans to vote for TARP, to vote for the bailout, and he's now out there building his speakership in part on demonizing the bailout that he wept openly on the floor begging people to vote for. So he's a weeper. There's people in cable news that we all know who part of the way that they connect with people is by weeping. It's one of the things that he does. I think it is probably moving to him that he's Speaker.
I don't let you catch me.
He's better than Beck.
I'm a weeper, but usually I find a way to
I'm laughing on the outside but crying on the inside myself.
Don't compare any human being to Glenn Beck.
Did I say his name?
You said there's a weeper on the other.
You know, it's all I'm just saying is that this is one of the things that he does. It doesn't even mean that it's put on.
Well, Bob Dole
it's just
did
one of
too.
the ways that he connects with people. And so, yeah, it's a big deal that he's Speaker, but TARP was a big deal to him, too.
Well, he's a cloth-cut Republican. There's a long tradition of people like that. They're not all rich people.
This has nothing to do with his class.
No, it does have to do. It has to do with what he meant tonight, and he talked about.
I'm the first member of my family in like 120 years to go to college,
Well,
and
good.
I never burst
You're
into
entitled
tears
to cry.
about
You're
it.
entitled to.
Well,
I think he was talking about the crap he had to do to get where he got, which may not be something
he
worthy
got
of
knocked out of the leadership. J.C. Watts knocked him out of the leadership back in 1998. He thought his career was done. It was going in reverse. I mean, I think I understand, having been in those institutions, what he was feeling. I actually didn't know he was that much of a weeper, so now I'm going to have to adjust my reaction.
He also told Politico today, like me, these guys, meaning new Republicans getting elected today, aren't professional politicians. He's been in Congress for 20 years, and before that was in the state legislature. I mean, he was first elected to office 26 years ago, and he's giving this heartfelt, I'm a guy sweeping floors in a bar. He's been in elected office for 26 years, and he cries frequently whenever he needs to make an important point. So, yes, he's good at what he does. No, I don't think it moves people into thinking that he's anything more than the politician that he is.
You know, go to the Speaker of the House, you know, the offices, the suite, the overlooking the mall and down at the Washington Monument. I mean, it's an impressive.
Well, don't you jump up in the air and click your heels rather than burst into tears?
I think you get under oath, you know, a little verklempt when you would assume that sort of. Well, I'm just saying.
Okay. You know. I'm just saying Harry Reid is scheduled to speak. We're past that.
He better not cry.
He better not cry.
Harry ain't going to cry.
He better not pout because Santa Claus is also going to be. One thing Ed brought up of interest is Governor Christie of New Jersey a dark horse contender for the Republican nomination in 2012?
But he said he's not going to run. I mean, he made a Sherman-like statement.
Might he not, yes, and plus, might he not wear well in his current position? Because one thing he is going to do, and it is going to respond whether it's necessary or not, as Governor Patterson in New York discovered, when you have to cut an enormous amount of money out of a budget, people take it personally and blame you, whether it's your fault or not.
The only political landscape in which a name like that could come up for president is on a team that has nobody. That's when you start going all the way over to, what about the guy who's been governor for a few weeks? What about him? The guy who's done nothing. What about him?
But Lawrence, at least he named one thing he'd cut. We couldn't get that out of anybody else. That tunnel.
Okay, we've got something unusual, and it's fitting for the late hour, of the possibility of a vote count error in Colorado, and our Tom Costello has details for us. Tom, what on earth's going on?
Keith, you may have noticed about 30, 45 minutes ago or so, we saw a sudden surge for Ken Buck. Michael Bennet, the Democrat, had been ahead all night in the polls. Suddenly, Buck surged by 30 to 40,000 votes. All of us were wondering, where is that coming from? Is it the conservative El Paso County that came in? Well, now the Associated Press bureau chief is telling our affiliate here, KUSA, which is one of the strongest NBC affiliates in the country, telling KUSA that it may have made an error, a 30 to 40,000 vote error. It may have put those votes from, of all counties, Boulder, the most liberal county in the state, put those votes in the Buck column instead of the Bennett column. If that's true, then they would have to withdraw or transfer those votes back out of Buck over to Bennett. Bennett would go back into the lead. The Associated Press is now going back and double-checking all of their work. KUSA is also involved in trying to double-check the work. But at the moment, this vote is, again, way too close to call, with Buck and Bennett neck and neck, and it's possible that Bennett may move ahead again. Back to you.
Is, Tom, that something that could be handled on the county level, or does the state get involved? Where does it go from there?
I need to double check my information and find out, is that an Associated Press issue completely, or is this a county election issue problem? But the Associated Press seemed to be taking ownership of that problem when they were talking to our affiliate. The Bennett campaign people tell me that they've heard the exact same story and that all of us should plan on a very late night.
Well, then we'll apologize on behalf of the network for making fun of the faxes in Nevada and also the Iditarod runs in Alaska, which seem to have worked effectively when the fully modernized technology of Boulder, Colorado seems to have let this thing down. We are, with great thanks to Tom Costello, we'll obviously follow the Colorado situation as closely as circumstances permit. It's too bad UPI is no longer a major force in the wire service game. The competition was always good. We're waiting for Harry Reid to speak after his victory in Nevada. Our coverage of the midterms continues here from MSNBC World Headquarters in New York in just a moment. Waiting for Senator Harry Reid, who has retained his seat, the majority leader for the Democrats, retaining his seat against the challenge of Sharon Angle to speak momentarily from Las Vegas. Waiting further details from Colorado, where a big late switch in the Senate race there from Michael Bennet to Ken Buck may have been a typographical error. Believe it or not, that should keep you up for another hour or so. And Washington, that is also still too close to call. The remaining Senate seats absolutely boldly fascinating, and this continues to be one. The Senate from Alaska, write-in, leads Joe Miller and Scott McAdams. Write-in includes Lisa Murkowski and secret other challengers. And to comment on that and the night in general is the senator from Alaska we know of, Senator Mark Begich, who joins us from Washington. Thanks for waiting with us, Senator. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It was actually enjoyable to watch you guys go at each other.
Yes.
And try to figure out who cries the most.
Yes.
So it was interesting to watch it. But I'm happy to be here.
Explain to the degree that you can what you know is going on in Alaska with that vote.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, last week I said one thing. Of course, you know I support Scott McAdams. I said he's going to get about 25% or win. It's going to be either or, because what every poll showed all the way through Sunday was between 13 and 19% undecided. These were voters that were not going to necessarily go to Joe Miller. They were stuck between Lisa Murkowski and Scott McAdams, trying to figure out who could beat him or who would be Joe Miller. So they were kind of stuck in this limbo. And literally, the last poll I saw Sunday night coming into Monday had about 15% undecided. Very large when you think about it coming into a Tuesday election. So we figured whatever's going to happen, it's going to move one big bunch. It's not going to be, split in third. And what happened here, clearly, at least in this first indication, is they moved in one big bunch over to the write-in candidate. Because our early vote, you'll see, is very small compared to what it was 2 years ago when I ran. The early vote was significant. I will have to say one thing. The person who's managing Harry Reid's campaign, Brandon Hall, was our guy in Alaska working the early vote and also the grassroots effort. So just a little coincidence there, I would say. But what happened is the early vote was small, so the voters came in. They were not going to vote early. They were trying to figure out who to vote for. And our biggest concern that we always had with Scott was he had 2 months to be known. He raised an enormous amount of money from individuals, but could we cross the line quick enough for people to feel comfortable to move? It looks like the write-in candidate, in this case Lisa Murkowski, may have been able to capture her people quick enough.
With the caveat that Senator Reid is supposedly making his way to the podium now in Las Vegas, let me ask you this question. Is there any reason to expect, even though those votes are, the write-ins are not known and won't be broken out until they're actually open, is there any reason to believe that there's any significant portion of that 40% who voted write-in who are not voting Murkowski?
Well, there's always a percentage, because welcome to Alaska politics.
Yeah.
There'll be a percentage, so it's hard to say, but if it's a large margin, she'll be okay. And so, again, Alaska politics is always unusual, as you know, and here we go through another opportunity. But those votes will not be open for 2 weeks, so everyone has to patiently wait. This is a very interesting time that we're in up in Alaska and Alaska politics. Also, only about 18% of the votes 18% turned out so far. So very low turnout, which is unbelievable when you think about it.
Senator, do you think Sarah Palin is qualified to be president of the United States?
Listen, I served as mayor when she was governor. You're qualified to be able to file, but I think she does not have it to be president of the United States.
She doesn't have the qualifications in terms of intellect or a background or experience to be president.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think she does. I mean, I've seen you, Chris, make some great comments. I mean, she has political savvy, as you know. Yeah. You've said that multiple times. But, when you have to, she left. She quit Alaska after 2 years. And unemployment was on the rise. There was big projects pending. She left. And the reality is, it takes a lot to be an executive, not just 2 years in the governor's position, but you got a lot more work to be done. And
what's her motive? What's her motive? That's my favorite question in politics. I mean, everybody's got a mix of motives, I suppose, but besides raw ambition to be noticed, what is it?
I don't know. I try not to put personal, like I said,
really,
I enjoyed
it's a
watching.
Good question. Motive.
Well, it's a fair question, but I'm not, the personal motives, I can't tell you. I know she is very ambitious. She wants to be a player, as she tried to do this election. She's tried to be in the mix to make sure she has an input into who runs the country or who manages the affairs of Congress. The real issue, which I've noticed in the last 2 weeks, is what she spends a lot more time doing, is just calling people names. I mean, she calls Republicans names, she calls Democrats names. the question that's the bottom line is, what's their plan? What's their action? I don't care if she's thinking or not thinking about running for president. What the issue is, she's a political leader out there, and she needs to be stepping up to the plate with what her plans are. And all you hear, if you just disagree with her, you're going to be called a name. That's what I've learned with her. Let me give you a chance
to call her name. If she were on Jeopardy right now and the topic was national government, American government generally defined, would she look like an imbecile or would she look okay? Does she know anything?
Oh, I think she knows. Oh, I think she does. I've met with her multiple times when I was mayor, when she was governor. But, you know, when I look at the amount of people who can be running on the Republican side, it's going to be a pretty mixed bag. But I would also say she caters to the, Republican primary type of voter. So in those primaries that are very strategically laid out, if you look at where she's laid out her, her marker on certain races, those are strategic locations for early primaries. And so she's thinking long term here. Don't be fooled. But I'll tell you.
Have you ever been an eyewitness to her actually reading something? Have you ever seen her? No, I'm dead serious about this. Have you ever seen her reading words on a piece of paper, a newspaper, magazine, anything? Have you ever seen her read something?
I've always, when I've been around her, when I was mayor, she was doing ribbon cuttings, things like that. She always had speeches that she had written remarks on. That's what I've known.
Okay, that's a safe answer.
But,
Thank you, Senator.
It's not about Palin. It's about what's going to happen now in the next 2 years. It's going to be an exciting time.
Senator Mark Begich of Alaska, who is not in the position of trailing fill in the blank as Mr. Miller is at the moment in Alaska. Great thanks for your time. Great thanks for staying up with us.
Thank you, guys. You have a great evening.
All right. While we have time, and Harry Reid is still there to make his victory speech, and given what he did tonight, we should be waiting for him. He did the job, and his people did the job. Jonathan Alter of Newsweek and MSNBC joins us now. A photograph has been presented of President Obama on the phone to Speaker Presumptive Boehner tonight. And describe what we know early on about the relationship between the White House and this new. He looks enthused as heck.
It's Saturday Night Live. It is Saturday Night Live.
Describe what we know so far about this impending relationship between a Democratic president and a Republican House.
You know, it just has not been a good relationship. The president told me in an interview last year that the biggest surprise of his presidency was that when he went over and met just with Republicans in the House of Representatives less than a month after he was sworn in, he thought that they were going to negotiate over what the recovery program would be. And Boehner instructed every member of the Republican caucus, no, we are not going to vote with the president, period. No negotiations. So he was ready to take out anything they objected to and, come to some kind of deal when the economy was cratering. We're losing 800,000 jobs a month, and Boehner wouldn't play. The president was resentful, might be too strong a word, but he was not impressed with that. He didn't think it was a stand-up thing to do. He thought they would be more interested in governing. And in the time since then, he said privately, all I want for Christmas is a Republican opposition that I can negotiate with. And David Broder had that in a column not too long ago. And the idea that he will now sit down with them, it's inevitable. He does play golf. Boehner plays golf. They have some common interests, and they're going to have to learn how to work together.
But they wouldn't be able to decide who gets to tee off first.
Well, you know what? It's in their mutual interest, Keith, to put some points on the board, as Obama likes to say, on education. Boehner was actually involved with Ted Kennedy and former President Bush on education reform. It's an issue that he feels strongly about, and there's real areas of agreement on that, perhaps on some clean energy legislation, some tax legislation for small business. They can find some common ground. But if they show achievement together, they both win. That's what Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton found in 1995. So it's not as if, there's going to be necessarily super gridlock on every issue, although that's conventional wisdom right now in Washington.
Because the last 2 years of Democratic-Republican cooperation, when Democrats held a whip in both hands, worked so well?
But, now the Republicans have a different incentive. For the last 2 years, it was just obstruct, obstruct, obstruct. No, no, no. That doesn't work for them moving forward. That's not a good position to be in going into 2012. So I don't want to be Pollyannish about this. I think, on the larger issues, They're not going to get much done of significance, but there are a few discrete areas that they'll probably inflate to try to say to the American public that Washington isn't totally dysfunctional, which is in both of their interests.
Save National Pie Day.
It should be a little bit better than that.
It's Rachel here. In what sense how would the Republicans have concluded that obstruction only didn't work for them? And in what way did it not work for them? And would they be likely to turn over their obstruction agenda towards 2012? It seems like it's worked great.
But there's nothing right now to obstruct because Obama got most of what he wanted through, okay? So the question will quickly become, can the GOP show that they have any ability to govern? The onus will be on them. Again, I think that the odds are still for super gridlock, generally speaking, nothing big happening for the country. But there's certain things that have to be reauthorized. For instance, you know, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which used to be called No Child Left Behind. They've left the name behind now. They're going to call it something else. But that is coming up at the beginning of next year. They will have to come to some agreement on that. There's certain things that relate to the functioning of government, not just the debt ceiling, but a whole lot of other things that, you know, Boehner, who has some experience in the House, will have to figure out how to cooperate with the administration on. What will get much more of the publicity is when they're at loggerheads, and there'll be plenty of that.
Jonathan, it's Lawrence O'Donnell. No Child Left Behind was passed before the Republicans in the House had a significant wing that wants to abolish the Department of Education. John Boehner has a whole new set of calculations to make about what the Republicans are capable of backing, if anything, on education. Nothing in the education universe has to be reauthorized. No Child Left Behind can be left to die by John Boehner and the Republican Congress. I don't see any reason why they need to do that.
You know what? The numbers on abolishing the Department of Education are not good. They are not high. And there are an awful lot of local school districts in Republican areas that want that, you know, Title I money or other aid from Washington. So, and Boehner knows this, so there will be a struggle, a big schism within the Republican Party. But at the end of the day, Boehner has a responsibility to bridge those divisions and show that he can produce. If he can't, he's not going to be looking good.
Jonathan Alter, great thanks. As you see, Harry Reid and the smile that rarely appears on camera, broad and genuine as he steps out towards the podium and also defies the wisdom that was beginning to build up that there was a Spinal Tap thing going on here, like in that movie where he just sort of got stuck somewhere in the back and couldn't find the stage.
Let's just review what this candidate did. He did something that I have not seen a modern politician do. He brought a health care bill forward in the Senate that he knew was unpopular in his state, that could lead to his defeat, and he advanced it anyway.
All right, one thing before Mr. Reid speaks. Chuck Todd, 30 seconds on this error in counting in Colorado.
It's a Boulder County error, and it did sort of mess around. There have been a couple of problems in Colorado with the vote. Here's what I can tell you. There's about a 400 vote difference at this point. Half the vote seems to be missing out of Boulder. Half the vote still uncounted in Denver. That would portend to be good news for Mr. Bennett, but look, Colorado's been a funky vote-counting state all night, guys.
We're not going to get
vote missing in Boulder.
Missing. We're not going to get it tonight, you're saying?
No. It's missing as in uncounted there, Rachel.
All right, good.
Sorry about that.
Look, error by the Associated Press is not usually a good reason for deciding a senatorial race or anything else bigger than a Little League ball game.
That's right.
So anything's possible at this point. All right, Chuck,
guys.
keep working that, and we'll now listen to Harry Reid and his night of great triumph. Here he is.
Yes, we did. Today, Nevada chose hope over fear. Nevada chose to move forward, not backwards. Nevada made this choice because we know it's not about us versus them. It's about every Nevadan, all of us, in this together. Today you made possible what many called impossible. And I'm grateful you did. Not for me, but for the future we all share as Nevadans. First, let me thank my wife. My wife and my best friend. I wanted you by my side since the first time I saw you. And you've been there ever since, every step of the way. To my family, my tireless staff, and all my generous volunteers, I wish my voice could convey what's in my heart. That's thank you, thank you, thank you. You never gave up. You never gave up. Because you know Nevadans never give up. I know how hard you worked, and I appreciate each minute you spent, each hour, days, weeks, months, and years. And I thank the people of Nevada. It's always been my honor to represent the state, to serve the state, and to fight for the state, and to fight for each of you. And friends, I'm not finished fighting. In fact, tonight, I'm more determined than ever. You see, I've been in some pretty tough fights in my day. They've been in the street, then in a boxing ring, and they've been in the United States Senate. But I have to admit, this has been one of the toughest. But it's nothing compared to the fights families are facing all over Nevada right now. This race has been called, but the fight is far from over. The bell that just rang isn't the end of the fight, it's the start of the next round. I know a lot of Nevadans feel like they've been counted out. But you know, I know what that's like. I've taken on powerful forces. No one dared to challenge them. And I've run in some tough elections. No one thought I could win. So I know what it's like to have the odds stacked against you. I know what it's like to take a punch. I've taken a few. But more importantly, I know what it's like to get back on your feet. My story and this night prove that difficult isn't synonymous with impossible. And we're proof that a test is tough only if you're not tough. My career and this campaign have been driven by a simple belief. If a poor kid from Searchlight can make it, anybody can make it. Everyone in Nevada deserves a chance. Everyone in America deserves a chance. Nevada's going to recover. Nevada's going to recover. Nevada's going to prosper. And Nevada's going to lead. We're going to bounce back stronger than ever. I've never counted Nevada out, and I'm not about to start right now. I think you know that about me. You also know the balloons and ballrooms aren't my style. They're not my thing. So everybody enjoy tonight. But remember tomorrow, it's back to work for the people of Nevada. You see, tomorrow morning, there will still be too few jobs for too many people. There will still be too many foreclosure signs in too many front yards. There will still be too many kids in crowded classrooms and too many students wondering how can they afford college. But your hard work, and it has been really hard, has given Nevada the chance to believe again that tomorrow isn't impossible. So before I finish here tonight, I want to invite on stage just a handful of those who made tonight possible. My family, my friends, my staff, they all made tonight possible. Because of you, tonight, because of you, we didn't just make history, we made a lot of futures. Because of you, we did it. Thank you.
Harry Reid, still the Senate Majority Leader, returned to his seat and presumably still in charge. Nobody's going to challenge him after that victory, I don't think. That's going to wrap up what we do here for Lawrence O'Donnell and Eugene Robinson and Chris Matthews and Rachel Maddow. It's been a pleasure to share the desk with you, lady and gentlemen. And we will leave you in the capable hands of Chris Jansing after a break. There are 3 big stories still going on that are worth sticking around with Chris. Alaska looks to be going to the write-in candidate. Might be Lisa Murkowski, might be something else. It's like a box of Cracker Jack. You never know. Colorado's vote is anybody's guess because of typos reported by the Associated Press, supposedly from Boulder, Colorado. But now the recorder in Boulder, Colorado is saying it's leaving here fine. There's no problem in Colorado. And Washington State Senate race is still too close to call. Your headlines, the Democrats are going to retain the Senate one way or the other, too early to call. And the House went clearly and decisively to the Republicans. So that'll wrap us up. Chris is next. MSNBC's coverage continues right after this.